Before we start, may I request the Zoom participants to give us a quick thumbs up just to be certain that you can hear me loud and clear. To start our program, let us put ourselves to the holy presence of our Lord Jesus Christ. Father, we praise you for this event and your purpose for it. We know that when we gather together, you always have a divine agenda. We love you for that, Father, that even when we have done what you have asked, the results are so much greater than we could ever have imagined. Your prayer today is that your will be done through this training. Take what we have prepared and multiply our efforts as only you can. Steer our intentions to align with your righteous will. Remind us of your faithful provision when our efforts fail us or fall short. May all your glory go up to you when we reach the finish lines and climb our benchmarks. Blanket us with your peace today, Father. Keep us physically safe and guard our hearts and minds from pride and selfishness. Keep love at the forefront of our minds today and the guiding light for all we set out to accomplish and celebrate. In Jesus' name, amen. Once again, a pleasant morning to everyone and welcome to the third day of the online training for the Municipal Local Government Units under Public Act number 9184 and its 2016 revised implementing rules and regulations, brought to you by the Government Procurement Policy Board Technical Support Office. I am Janelle de la Cruz and I will be your host for today's virtual activity. Before we start our today's session, we want to know how are you today? So may I request everyone to open their cameras and show us your left or right hand for this activity. So, i-gallery ko po para makita ko po kayo. Ayan. So, our activity is put your finger down activity. So, all you have to do is put your finger down if you agree on the question. So, let's start. So, our first question is, nakapag-almusal na ba kayo? So, meron pa pong hindi nakakapag-almusal, no? So, ayan. Meron po bang hindi pa nagsha-shower sa mga timbahay? Meron pa po ba siyang hindi nakakapaghilamos or shower? Naku, mukhang meron pang hindi. Si Sir, wala pang nata-thumbs down, ah. So, meron po ba diyang naka-semi-formal sa mga timbahay or ibig sabihin, yung taas formal, pero sa baba ay naka-loungewear lang or pambahay? Meron po ba dyan? Naku, si Sir hindi na sumagot, si Sir LGU Esperanza. Nawala si Sir. Ano, Sir? Fourth question, ayun. Meron na po ba kayong napulot na learning sa nakalipas na araw, na 2 araw ng ating training? Ayan. Ayan, marami namang nag-finger down, no? And for the last question, thumbs up naman po tayo or thumbs down. Ready na po ba kayo sa training activity natin for today? Yay! Ready na po tayong lahat. So, and that's it. I hope that all of us now are in the same vibes or goals for today. Just a quick recap for yesterday learning session. We have a meaningful and productive lecture with Ms. Gracela A. Ortiz on the discussion of procurement planning and budget linkage. We have an in-depth learning discussion on the fundamentals of procurement planning, understanding its basic principles,
including market survey and project costing, preparation of PPMP, Project Procurement Management Plan, and APP, Annual Procurement Plan, and the conduct of early procurement activities. Moving on, before we dive to the program proper, let me give you an overview of the program of activities for the third day of our online training on government procurement. So for today's activity, I am particularly excited because we will be tackling about the standard bidding procedures for goods, infrastructure projects, and consulting services. Further, to make our discussion even more exciting, I would like to remind everyone that we shall be conducting series of knowledge check questions in this online training. So our Zoom participants shall answer questions through poll, which shall be flashed later in your screen. So we have a jam-packed session ahead of us. So please be sure to bring your A game starting now until the end of our activity, and we look forward for everyone's participation on this online training program. So as promised, before we proceed to our program, we will be giving special tokens to our 2 early bird participants who has first entered the waiting room almost an hour before our program. So upon verification and validation of our technical team, we would like to announce our first early bird participant from the local government unit of Las Nieves, Miss Grace Cabian. Congratulations po, ma'am. And our second early bird is from local government unit Baras Rizal, Miss Donna Fuliante. Congratulations po, ma'am. Our event secretariat shall coordinate with you regarding on how you may claim your prizes. So to the winners of our special tokens, please don't forget to register on our OTMS or your prize will be forfeited. So our daily reminder po, please be reminded to register to the online training management system of the GPPB TSO by visiting the link flashed in your screens and using the control number emailed to you by our event secretariat. To our winners of special tokens, please register po, don't forget. And we would also like to remind all participants to please accomplish the participants' daily attendance sheet through Google Forms by visiting the link shared to you by our event secretariat in our Zoom chat box. Rest assured that all information gathered for this online training shall be treated with utmost confidentiality consistent with provisions of the Data Privacy Act. All right, let us now move on to the lecture proper for the first topic for this online training. With that, allow me to introduce our resource speaker. It is my pleasure to introduce to you our resource speaker for today. He is currently the Chief Privatization Officer of the Privatization and Management Office, an agency attached to the Department of Finance. He formerly served as the Assistant Secretary for Procurement and the Director for Legal Service of the Department of Transportation. He holds the rank of CESO 1, the highest rank in the Career Executive Service. Prior to joining government, he worked as an associate at the ACCRA Law Office and a consultant at the Asian Development Bank Administrative Tribunal. He is also a member of the faculty of the College of Law of the University of the Philippines and the University of the East, where he teaches various civil and commercial law subjects. He obtained his Bachelor of Laws degree from the University of the Philippines, cum laude, and his Bachelor of Science in Legal Management degree from the Ateneo de Manila University, cum laude. He took up his degree on Master of Business Administration from the University of Bradford and his Master's of Laws degree
from the University of Durham in the United Kingdom as a British government scholar. He also completed levels 1, 2, 3 of the Public Procurement Specialist Certification course conducted by the GPPB through the UP National Engineering Center. Joining us today, Chief Privatization Officer of the Privatization and Management Office and a GPPB recognized trainer, please welcome Attorney Gerard L. Chan.
Hi.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Okay naman yung audio. Just tell me if there are problems sa chat box. So good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is safe in their houses and in their offices. Everyone is safe and healthy. So, as mentioned a while ago, the lecture for today will be an introduction or a walkthrough of the standard bidding procedures for goods, infra, and consulting. So this is quite a long and extensive lecture compared to, I suppose, your other lectures in your other topics. So we will cover goods, infra, and consulting. Okay, so I will tell you if it's just this part is only related to consulting and goods and infra. Okay. So let's start, since this is quite a long discussion. So let's start with the lecture proper. So what is the purpose of this lecture? To understand the key concepts in to understand the key concepts in the bidding procedures for goods, for infra, and for consulting. So we know naman, di ba, that our procurement is categorized into three categories: is either goods, infra, or consulting. So this lecture will cover all the basic procedures for all the three. Okay? So undertake procurement activities involving infra in compliance with 9184 and the IRR. So next slide. So of course, this will be the breakdown of our discussion for this morning. The first part will be some general principles and considerations by way of backgrounder and by way of a refresher to everyone. And then we will dive into the step-by-step process of procurement for goods.
Turo ko nga sa'yo pag yung sasabi ni Madala Potops.
Next slide. So let's start with the first part, no? Itong general, parang review lang to ng mga principles and consideration. Next slide. So we know that the general principle, the overarching principle in 9184 is, of course, public bidding. So by default, as a general rule, diba, kailangan merong public bidding. That is Section 10 of Article 4, 9184. And only by exception are we allowed to do alternative methods of procurement. So by exception siya. So since it is by exception, it should follow the strict requirements. The strict requirements which are also provided in 9184. Kung kailan lang tayo pwede mag alternative methods of procurement. So kung hindi tayo nag-qualify doon sa requirements ng alternative methods of procurement, then by default, ano tayo? Competitive bidding. So that is the general principle here. Next slide. So ano ba yung competitive bidding? The purpose of competitive bidding is to protect public interest for the best possible advantages through open competition, to provide or preclude suspicion of favoritism and anomalies. So ba't importante ang competitive bidding? Diba? Kailangan magkaroon ng competition. Kailangan magkaroon ng competition among the different suppliers, for instance, or different consultants and contractors. Kasi kung walang competition, then we have no choice but just to get from this one or two particular supplier or consultant. Pero pag may competition, di ba, naglalaban-laban yung mga suppliers, then we're sure government is able to get the best price at the best value. Because nagkakaroon ng competition, naglalaban-laban yung mga suppliers. So at the end of the day, it is government who benefits kung may competition. Pero kung walang competition, nakatali tayo doon sa isa o dalawang supplier kung magkano yung i-dictate nila na presyo, doon tayo nakatali, then we're not sure, no, if we're getting the best value for our money. Next slide. So another basic principle, di ba? We know this already. No APP, no procurement. Ano ba ang APP? The Annual Procurement Plan. Di ba? Nakalista dito ang lahat ng mga procurement natin for that particular year and also yung mode of procurement para doon sa item na yun. So kung yung item na yun ay wala sa APP, then wala tayong dahilan, no, para isalang siya for procurement because number one, wala rin siyang budget. Diba? Kasi doon natin nilalagyan ng budget doon sa APP as approved by Congress. So the method of procurement in the approved APP shall be used. Okay? So that's another basic principle. Next slide. Goods and services. Ano ba ang goods? So ano ba ang coverage sa goods? Should covers all this, no? Of course, we know what is goods, furnitures and fixtures, office equipment, yung mga nahahawakan natin, tangible stuff, supplies and materials. But on top of that, diba, kasama din dyan ang subscriptions and licenses, repairs, diba, janitorial, security, and maintenance services. So yan ang saklaw ng goods, kasi goods and services. Next slide. For infra naman, so this is the coverage for infra. No? So it's basically the construction, diba? Construction, repair, demolition, okay, retrofitting and everything of these projects on the screen. So hindi lang siya construction, kasama ang repair, kasama ang demolition, kasama retrofitting of these items. Next slide. Consulting naman, for consulting services, this is the coverage of consulting services, no? Advisory and review services. Advisory and review services, pre-investment or feasibility studies, design, construction supervision, management and related services, as well as other technical services or special studies. Okay. So ito yung coverage ng consulting services. Next slide. So yung bidding procedure natin, we adopt the two envelope system. Diba? When we submit the bid, it is consisting of two envelopes, the financial and the technical envelope and the financial envelope. And then we pack it in one single envelope and we submit the bid envelope. Pag online submission or electronic submission of bids, then ganun din siya. Meron kang technical component or technical envelope and the financial envelope, and both of them are password protected. And then it's inside the bid envelope, which is also password protected if you do online or electronic submission of bids. Next slide. So in general, who are eligible bidders? Duly licensed Filipino citizens or sole proprietorships, corporations, 60% Filipino, cooperatives, duly organized under Philippine laws, foreign bidders, kung allowed sila under treaty or executive agreement, joint ventures, again, 60% Filipino ownership, partnerships, 60% Filipino ownership. So these in general are the eligible bidders. Next slide. So there is this rule, no, in EO 65 2018. So binabaan nila from 75%, inallow nila ang 60% ownership when it comes to partnership. Partnerships duly organized under the laws of the Philippines, and which are at least 60% of interest belongs to citizens of the Philippines. So dati kasi 75. So corporation 60% pa rin. And then joint venture 60%. So it became uniform already. Everything is 60%, 60-40. 60% Filipino and 40% foreign. Next slide. So when to hire for consultants? So the following are considered in the hiring of the consultant. Diba? So siningit natin to kasi this lecture includes consultancy. So bakit tayo nag-hire ng consultant? Ano yung mga criteria when we're looking for consultants? So number one is the expertise, experience, and capability. That's the whole point of hiring a consultant. Diba? We need knowledge which is not found inside the agency. Kaya tayo lumalabas sa agency, naghahanap tayo ng knowledge or technical know-how na nasa labas ng agency. So expertise, experience, and capability. Of course, cost. Pwedeng kasama ang cost sa ating consideration. Later on, we will discuss yung quality cost-based evaluation or quality-based evaluation, QCBE and QBE. Diba? So pwedeng kasama ang cost sa pag-evaluate o pwedeng hindi kasama ang cost sa pag-evaluate. Where applicable, tinitingnan rin natin na merong technology and knowledge transfer. Okay, shall be required in the provision of consulting services. Pwede magkaroon ng provision doon na kailangan mag-train si consultant ng mga empleyado natin sa ahensya para kahit tapos na yung term nila, tapos na yung contract nila, wala na sila, yung mga tao sa ahensya will be able to do yung ginagawa ng consultant. Otherwise, kailangan natin ulit mag-hire. So ideally, merong provision on technology and knowledge transfer na kailangan as part of na trabaho na gagawin ni consultant. So these are the general things na hinahanap natin sa isang consultancy contract or consultancy bidding. Next slide. So ano yung pagkakaiba ng goods and infra versus consulting? No? So goods and infra, we know, di ba, it's lowest calculated and responsive bid. The lower, the better. Naglalabanan sila sa price. Pero sa consulting, it's highest rated responsive bid. No? The higher, the better. So parang ganito, para siyang beauty pageant. Pataasan kayo ng meeting pagdating sa consultant. So yun ang pinagkaiba. As we go through the lecture, we will point out saan nagkaiba ang procedure pagdating sa goods and infra versus procedure pagdating sa consulting. Okay, number one is yung sa consulting, the higher the better. Para siyang ganito, beauty pageant. Next slide. So observers, no? 9184 also requires observers. Diba? Nadaanan nito sa Procurement 101. Sabi doon, there must be at least 3 observers. Diba? Isa doon yung in-house resident COA natin. And then yung isa is duly authorized private sector group. And another one is from the NGO. Okay. So yun, itong tatlo ang required sa observer. Kailangan merong observer dito during pre-bid conference, preliminary examination of bid evaluation, and post-qualification. Dapat may observers dito. So how do we do it? We must invite them in writing at least 5 days before the date of these procurement activities. So 5 days before, kailangan ma-invite. No? So whether or not they show up, it doesn't matter. So even if they did not attend, okay lang yun. Ang importante, they were invited at least 5 days in writing when it comes to these 4 activities. Okay, that is very important. Because later on, baka yung mga losing bidders will question the bidding because we did not invite observers. Next slide. This is a new provision. So since we're now doing online, a lot of things are being done online, we also have to provide online access to these observers. Online monitoring for observers using the MTOJEPs. Procuring entity to provide online access to observers for monitoring all stages of the procurement using the MTOJEPs. So the procuring entity to inform the GPP BTSO if online access cannot be provided. So this is GPPP Circular 1-2021. No, if you're doing the online, let's say online na mga procedures, kailangan meron ding online way na makapag-observe si observer using the online MTOJEPs. Next slide. Knowledge check.
So for our first knowledge check, may we ask the participants to select their answer through the Zoom polling question. May we ask our technical team to please flash the question. Let me just read the question po, no? And you may answer in the Zoom chat box. Which of the following, ayan po, which of the following is not considered as goods? A, analogous services. B, subscription and license. C, office equipment. C, D, design and build. Or E, security and janitorial services. Please select your answer po through the Zoom polling feature. Let me repeat the question. Which of the following is not considered as good? A, analogous services. B, subscription and license. C, office equipment. D, design and build. Or E, security and janitorial services. Our Facebook Live viewers may also send in their answer to the comment section. So most of our answers po is letter D, design and build. So may we request Attorney Chan to explain po, or tama po ba yun, sir?
Yes, that is correct, no? Not considered as goods. So you will see na dun sa isang slide natin kanina, enumerate natin kung alin ang goods. So analogous services, ay nawala. So yung hindi kasama dyan ay yung design and build. Kasi ang design and build is infra. Diba? Subscription na nandun sa slide, diba? Subscription, office equipment, security and janitorial, lahat yan goods. Tapos itong design and build, hindi siya kasama. Okay?
Thank you po for the participants. Let us now continue the lecture.
Okay, so let's continue. Next slide. So ito na, let's now go through the procedure and the requirement for goods, for infra, and for consulting. Next slide. So ito yung flow chart for goods and services. Okay. So pre-procurement, okay, advertisement, dyan din yung number of days na kailangan gawin. No, 7 days. Pre-bid conference. We'll go into this step by step later on. We'll go into detail. Iisa-isahin natin ito later on. So this is just a bird's overview. Bird's eye view lang ng flow chart. No, pre-bid conference, 1 calendar day, okay, or as necessary. And then yung submission, no, yung 2 envelope system natin. Open the first envelope, open the second envelope. And then bid evaluation and ranking, and then post-qual, and then award. So you will see this is the flow chart and also the number of days na required. Itong number of days, take note of this kasi required to. Mandatory ito. We'll discuss later on na mandatory itong number of days. Di lang siya kung kailan lang natin gusto. Next slide. Pag infra naman, same as goods actually. No? The same flow chart. So pre-proc, advertisement, pre-bid, same. Itong submission and bids, nagkaiba lang. Okay, mas mahaba kay infra, either 50 or 65. Depende sa amount ng bid, ng ABC. And then bid evaluation na ranking, post-qual, and then award. So ito yung flow chart. Next slide. Sa consulting, na iba si consulting. Okay? Anong pinagkaiba ni consulting? So, pre-proc, okay, the same, advertisement. Ito, merong si consulting, meron siyang eligibility and shortlisting. So, wala nito sa goods and infra. Okay, merong shortlisting, eligibility check and shortlisting process ang consulting services. So, yung mga shortlisted consultants lang ang i-invite for the pre-bid conference. Okay, and then bid opening, diba, yung envelopes. And then, bid evaluation, then merong negotiation. Ito yung pinagkaiba also ni consulting. Meron siyang step na tinatawag na negotiation. And then post-qual. So ito yung dalawang distinct na difference ng consulting services. No? Yung may shortlisting state process siya and merong negotiation. Okay? We'll go into detail later on. So that's the difference. So don't mix up. Wala tayong shortlisting sa goods and infra. Wala ring negotiation sa goods and infra. Only for consulting. Okay, next slide. So ito yung tawag na earliest days. Yung pinakamaiksing number of days na matatapos mo ang procurement ng goods is 26. You could finish it as early as 26 days or the maximum is 136 days. Okay? Maximum period of time to complete the procurement activity is 136 calendar days. Excluding the approval of higher authority applicable. Yung procurement process lang, 136 calendar days. Next slide. Pag infra, you can also finish it as fast as 26 days also, but as long as maximum period ng either 141 calendar days or 156 calendar days, depending on yung amount of the ABC. Again, excluding the approval of higher authority. So take note of this number of days period, no, because this is required. You must make sure that you finish it within this maximum. We do not want to go beyond this to avoid any problems. Next slide. For consulting, earliest period is 36 days, and then the maximum is 180 days. Okay, so take note of this. Again, excluding the approval of higher authority. Kasi yung number of days, may ibang number of days pa yung approval of higher authority. Meaning, na ano mo na siya, andun na meron ka nang na-identify na winning bidder, ipapa-approve pa sa higher authority. Hindi nakasama sa bilang yun kasi may separate ng pagbibilang ng number of days yung approval ng higher authority. Next slide. Ito na yun. Ito yung approval of higher authority. So approval of higher authority, 20 calendar days from receipt to approve or disapprove the contract. Okay? And then, pag GOCC naman, 30 days maximum from receipt to approve or disapprove the contract. So si higher approving authority, meron siyang 20 days na hindi nakasama doon sa pagbilang mo sa actual procurement. Kasi hindi na naman kasama sa procurement yung pag-approve, di ba? So tapos yung pag GOCC naman, 30 days to approve or disapprove the contract. Next slide. So digital signatures. This is GPPB Resolution 16-2019 and 9-2020. It allowed the use of digital signatures. Procurement officers and officials may digitally or electronically sign procurement documents. Again, this is for purposes of efficiency, diba? Especially now that a lot of us are work from home. So para lang hindi matenga yung mga documents, we're allowed to do electronic signatures. Nakalista dito yung mga documents na allowed ang electronic signature. The PPMP, APP, RFQ, BBD, invitation to bid, bid bulletin, notice of postponement, notice of eligibility, shortlisting, abstract of quotation, abstract of bid, bid evaluation, notice to LCP, post-qual, notice of post-disqualification, notice of award, approval of higher authority, notice to proceed, and the back resolution. So a lot of these documents, pwede na ang electronic signature. So wala nang dahilan. So para ma-delay, para hindi ma-comply yung maximum number of days. No, unlike before this GPPB resolution, wala pang electronic signature. Okay, next slide. Ito naman, on top of the allowance, on top of allowing us to use electronic signature, digital signature, meron pa tayong use of video conferencing, webcasting, and similar technology. Okay, so hindi na kailangan ng face-to-face. But take note of this. This video conferencing, webcasting, and similar technology was allowed under GPPB Resolution 24/2018. So ibig sabihin, prior to COVID, allowed na yung, di ba? This is as early as 2018, the GPPB already allowed us to use video conferencing for back meetings. Di ba? Member of the back may be present either in person or face-to-face through video conferencing, webcasting, or similar technology. For procurement entities with such technology, decisions made of at least a majority of the back members present using such technology shall be considered valid and binding. So you will see, even before COVID, as early as 2018, the GPPB already allowed the use of video conferencing for purposes of determining the quorum. So there is really no excuse, that there is no quorum. Kasi nga allowed na yung video conferencing kahit nasa abroad, yung isang member during the time, di ba, nasa abroad, naka-travel, whatever, pwede siya mag-video conferencing as early as 2018. Next slide. So ano yung pwedeng gamitin? Kanina nilista natin yung mga documents na pwede ang electronic signature. Ngayon nakalista dito yung mga steps kung kailan pwede ang video conferencing. So same, nung 2018 pa lang ina-allow na to. Pre-procurement conference, bid opening, all other procurement activities and meetings. Ayun. So yung mga back meetings and everything, are allowed using video conferencing, even the bid opening. Okay, next slide. So now let's go to the step-by-step. We will now go into detail. There's a step-by-step. Step 1, we know pre-procurement conference. The pre-procurement conference, alam natin, it is an internal meeting. Hindi pa kasama si bidder dito. Sa loob to ng ahensya, tayo-tayo lang ito. Diba? Anong purpose ito? To determine the readiness of the procurement. Diba? Titingnan ni BAC, the participants are the BAC, Secretary, WG consultants, and user and other officials. Titingnan ni BAC kung ready na ba yung mga dokumento. Diba? Kasi si BAC yung mag-procurement eh. So titingnan niya muna kung ready na ba yung lahat ng mga dokumento, meron na bang pondo, lahat ng mga bid docs ready na ba, lahat ng mga approvals andyan na ba, bago niya isalang for procurement. Kung hindi pa siya comfortable na ready na siya, then hindi niya itutuloy yung procurement. ibabalik niya kay user, ibabalik niya kung kanino man para tapusin yung mga documents. It is conducted prior to the advertisement or posting of the invitation to bid. Diba? Kasi dapat, pag na-post na yung invitation to bid, plansyado na lahat. Hindi pwedeng na-i-post na tapos biglang babawin kasi meron palang kulang na dokumento or approval or pondo. No? Condition mandatory for projects with APC above 2 million for goods, above 5 million for infra, and above 1 million for consulting. So you need to do a pre-procurement conference in these cases. Okay. So yes, that's the purpose of pre-procurement. Very important to determine the readiness of the procurement. Kasi mahirap yung nilaunch mo na tapos babawiin mo, ka-cancel mo, or i-postpone mo siya. Next slide. Reference to brand names. But the general rule, we are not allowed to put the brand names. Prohibition applies to procurement of goods and good component of infrastructure and consulting services. So pagdating sa goods, we do not put the brand name. Diba? What do we do? What do we put? We put the specifications. Diba? Ano specifications which should be based on relevant characteristics, functionality, and performance requirement. Diba? Let's say we're gonna buy a laptop na IBM. So we don't put IBM, we put the specifications. Ito yung speed, ito yung may Wi-Fi, ganito siya kalaki, ganito siya kabigat, etc. We don't put the brand. Okay? Because of course, marami iba-ibang brand na pwede magkaroon ng ganung specification. Pag nilagyan mo yung brand, yung nakatali na, diba? We talk about the requirement of competition. So, mahirapan tayo magkakaroon ng competition if we just put the brand there. Diba? May exception. Except for items or parts that are compatible with the existing fleet or equipment of the same make and brand, and to maintain the performance, functionality, and useful life of the equipment. Diba? If we're getting parts which are may existing na, so kailangan compatible siya doon kasi ilalagay niya, kasi kung spare part siya spare part siya ng sasakyan. So we want yung spare parts compatible doon sa sasakyan. So let's say it should be compatible with Toyota. So nakalagay compatible with yun, yung kotse na yun. Diba? Because it is already, we need it to be compatible with an existing fleet or equipment of the same make and brand. And to maintain the performance, functionality, useful life of the equipment. Kasi kung ibang brand yung ilagay natin, baka masira o baka hindi gumana ng ganun ka-effective. So yun ang exception if we want something to be compatible. But as a general rule, we don't use the brand. We only put the relevant characteristic, functionality, and performance requirement. Next slide. This is also new. No? Electronic submission of bids. GPPB resolution number 9-2020. It's just during the time of COVID. The bank shall decide whether to allow the online or electronic submission and receipt of bid based on the PE's, procuring entities, procurement needs and capabilities, and shall be clearly stated in the invitation to bid, including bidding documents if allowed. So, optional to. Diba? Optional to on the part of the procuring entity kung meron kayong capability na gumawa o gumamit ng electronic and online and electronic submission of bids. Kung meron kayong infrastructure, meron kayong portal na pwede mag-accept ng online or electronic submission of bids. Dalawang way, no? Either gawin nyo on your own, meron kayong electronic means available sa inyong ahensya, meron kayong IT infrastructure na pwedeng tumanggap ng online and electronic submission of bids. Later on, we will discuss yung criteria. Ano yung mga minimum requirement ng isang online or electronic bid submission infrastructure. Hindi lang siya basta gusto nyo mag-online, gagawin niyo yun. Kailangan merong minimum standards kung kaya ng ahensya nyo na gumawa ng ganun. Okay? Or, si GPPB, meron din siyang sarili niyang online portal, pwede mong gamitin doon. But currently, itong GPPB online portal, under development pa. Hindi pa siya nagagamit. Okay? So, kung kaya nyo na mag-online or electronic submission, then you can do it. And if you want to do it, merong mga requirements na kailangan sundin para mangyari itong online or electronic submission of bids. Kung hindi kayang gawin yung online submission of bids, then we do the manual. We do the old-fashioned 2 envelopes and manual submission of bids. Okay, this is lang naman just an option for those agencies na gustong gumamit nito. Okay, next slide. So ito na yung mga requirements. Diba? GPPB resolution number 12-2020. There must be a certification. Magsa-certify si agency na gagamit siya ng online or electronic submission of bids. So the certification is issued by the IT, highest official managing the IT of the agency. It will describe the electronic system of procedure to be used by the procuring entity for the electronic submission and receipt of bids, complying with the requirements under 9-2020. And you have to submit this to the GPPBTSO. So, i-describe mo doon kung paano gumana yung online submission of bids ninyo. So, ipapaalam mo kay GPPBTSO na gumagamit kayo ng online or electronic submission of bids sa inyong ahensya. Okay? So, nandyan sa certification, may template na we'll discuss yung mga requirements. Okay? So, as I said, hindi lang basta gusto ninyo, ay gagawin ninyo kasi meron nga siyang basic requirements. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. So tapos na tayo sa pre-procurement conference. Now the next step is advertisement. Advertisement. This is very important. Why? Because it signals the start of the bidding process. Diba? Dito nag-uumpisa tumakbo ang metro. Diba? We mentioned a while ago yung mga required mandatory number of days na kailangang matapos yung procurement. Nag-uumpisa ang bibilangan ng metro dito sa advertisement. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, pag hindi pa tayo ready, huwag natin i-advertise kasi tumatakbo ang metro pag nag-advertise na tayo. Because this signals the start of the procurement process. This is the time when we invite interested bidders to participate in the procurement activity. 7 days siya kailangan nakapublish. Saan siya ipapublish? Number 1, sa PhilDep's website. Number 2, sa website ni government agency ninyo. And number 3, sa conspicuous place, no, in the bulletin board ng office ng ahensya ninyo. Yan ang advertisement. Next slide. Under the old rules kasi, well, under the 2016 IRR, dati, required pa ang newspaper advertisement. But nakalagay sa 2016 IRR, 2 years after the effectivity of the 2016 IRR, hindi na kailangan mag-newspaper publication. So starting October 28, 2018, hindi na kailangan ng newspaper publication. So yun. So no need for newspaper publication. Kaya hindi na siya natin sinama kanina doon sa listahan ng advertisement. Okay, next slide. So bidding documents fee. Magkano ang bidding documents? Diba? So the amount of the bidding documents depends on the EPC. Okay? So ito nakalista dito sa screen kung magkano ang EPC and magkano ang bidding documents. Ang bidding documents fee may be refunded if na-cancel ang procurement on the grounds provided under Section 41. So Section 41 gives the head of the procuring entity grounds for cancellation of the bidding or not to award the contract. Okay? And kung kasama doon yun, then pwede kang ma-refund yung iyong bidding documents fee na binayaran. Next slide. Eligibility and shortlisting for consulting lang to. Okay? For consulting, ang tawag doon is request for expression of interest. Right? So dun sa procurement for consulting, a prospective bidder should submit its expression of interest, eligibility document submission form, together with the required eligibility documents on or before the date and time for the submission of such requirement. Okay, so during the shortlisting stage, isasubmit ni bidder ang kanyang expression of interest together with yung mga eligibility document. So wala itong step na to sa goods and sa infra. Next slide. So shortlisting, again, for consulting lang to, is the process of determining the most qualified consultants from those who submitted the eligibility requirements. So the shortlist shall consist of 3 to 7. So mag-shortlist tayo ng 3 or 5 or 7 consultants na sasali dun sa next step. Okay? So ideally, nakalagay dito 5. 5 ang ideal number. Shortlisted consultants shall be invited to participate in the bidding for this project through a notice of eligibility and shortlisting issued by the board. So sasabihan ka na isa ka sa mga shortlisted consultants who will proceed to the next step of the process. Next slide. So shortlisting, di ba? So ano yung criteria natin sa pagpili ng mga makakapasok dun sa shortlist? So ito yung mga recommended weights and the recommended criteria. Of course, the experience of the consultant. Okay. Number 2, the qualification of the person to be assigned to the job. vis-a-vis the extent and complexity of the undertaking. And number 3, the current workload relative to the job capacity. Okay, so these are the criteria and the recommended weight, 50%, 30%, 20%. Okay. So as I said, para siyang beauty pageant, so we will rate them. We will rate them, and then yan ang basihan pagpasok nila sa shortlist. Next slide. The map ranks the prospective consultants that meet the passing score from highest to lowest to determine the shortlisted. Diba? So kung ilan yung target natin, kung sino yung makakapasok sa cut-off. Diba? So the map recommends a shortlist to the whole, and then yun na yung papasok sa sa next step. Only the shortlisted consultants can submit the proposals. Next slide. Again, sa consulting lang yan. Foreign bidders. Kung may foreign bidders tayo, yung Class A documents, diba? The Class A documents must be in English. Kung hindi siya in English, there must be a translation in English by the relevant foreign government agency. The foreign government agency authorized to translate documents or a registered translator in the foreign bidder's country. And on top of that, the document shall be authenticated by the appropriate Philippine Foreign Service establishment having jurisdiction over the foreign bidder's affairs in the Philippines. Okay, so dapat in English yung mga Class A documents ng isang foreign bidder. Next slide. Ito rin yung one of the new developments is the Apostille Convention. With the Apostille Convention, which became effective May 14, 2014 for the Philippines. So the Philippine Foreign Service Establishment will now authenticate documents through an apostille. And these documents are strictly for the use of public documents abroad. So through the apostille. Anong purpose ito? It shortens the process of authenticating the documents of foreign bidders who intend to participate in the Philippine government procurement in the Philippines. Okay. Of course, it makes it easier to authenticate compared to the old way, yung red ribbon. Diba, the old way, the red ribbon style is a bit more tedious. Mas marami parang 3 steps pa yon para makuha yung red ribbon. Ito hindi. Kasi yung foreign foreign service establishment will now be the one to authenticate to an apostille. If the foreign country is a signatory to this, is a member to this apostille convention. Diba? Kasi kung hindi, nakalagay dito, for contracting parties in the apostille convention, the document shall be authenticated through an apostille by the competent authority, except for countries identified by the DFA that still require legalization in red ribbon by the relevant embassy or consulate. Kasi mas mahaba yung or mas matagal pag red ribbon. Next slide. So next step. So tapos tayo sa pre-proc, invitation to bid. Okay, tapos yung bidding documents, nakuha mo na. So next step is the pre-bid. Diba? Ano yung purpose ng pre-bid? To discuss, clarify, and explain, among other things, the eligibility requirement and the technical and financial component of the contract to be bid, including questions and clarifications raised by the prospective bidders before and during the pre-bid conference. So it's basically a forum. Diba? It is basically an avenue para makausap ng mga bidders si BAC para magtanong ng mga questions, mag-clarifications, diba? Kung may mga vague provisions sa specs, diba? Sa scope of work, or what, kailangan pag-usapan, then it would be an opportunity para linawin, diba? Yung mga provisions na nakakalito dun sa bidding documents. Especially when we're talking about eligibility requirements and technical and financial component. Diba? So it should be an active discussion with the bidders. It must be done 12 days before the deadline for 12 days before the deadline for submission, but not earlier than 7 calendar days from the PhilJEB's posting. So, yun. Nakalagay din doon sa sa GPPP IRR or resolution. Kunyari walang tanong yung mga bidders. This is also an opportunity para i-educate ni BAC yung mga, especially the mga first-time bidders. So bibigyan sila ng mga pointers, mga reminders na ito yung mga usual na common mistake. Dito usually nagkakamali yung mga bidders, huwag nyo i-commit itong mga mistake na to, mga reminders, yung mga ganon. Diba? So Especially kung wala naman tanong, wala naman pag-uusapan, di mabuting gamitin na lang natin yung pre-bid conference para i-remind yung mga bidders, ibigyan sila ng tips and pointers para hindi sila ma-disqualify. Okay, so it's also used for that purpose. Kung walang tanong. Okay, next slide. Ayun, nakalagay, oh. BAC shall have a proactive role during the pre-bid conference. Measures, ito yung sinasabi ko, na measures to maximize pre-bid conference, GPPB Resolution 2-2018. So nakalagay doon, ano ba yung pag-uusapan natin during pre-bid conference? No, hindi yung parang walang tanong din, tapos na. So the BAC shall have a proactive role, no? Yun na, sinabi ko nga kanina, ibigyan natin sila ng pointers, ng tips, reminders, etc. Especially for the first-time bidders. You read the 2-2018, no? It will be there. Ano ba yung mga pag-uusapan natin during pre-bid conference? Next slide. Another new provision here, Resolution 4-2021. The BAC shall no longer post in the PE's website the minutes of the pre-bid conference. Tinanggal na ang requirement na mag-post ng minutes of the pre-bid conference sa website ni Procurement entity. Next slide. So let's say nagkaroon na ng pre-bid conference. So may mga tanong, may mga napag-usapan. So meron tayong minutes and meron din tayong bid bulletin. Nakalagay dun sa bid bulletin yung mga napag-usapan, yung mga changes, yung mga revisions, di ba, clarifications doon sa bidding documents, yung mga pinag-usapan during the pre-bid conference. Ilalagay natin siya sa bid bulletin. Ayun nakalagay, answer the request for clarification or interpretation. Clarify or modify any provision of the bidding documents. So it's issued by the BAC and duly signed by the BAC chairperson. It is issued or released 7 days before the deadline for the bid submission. Take note, query should be submitted to the BAC 10 days before deadline for the bid submission. Okay, so kung may queries, kailangan masabit siya kay BAC 10 days before the bid submission. Then ma-release ang bid bulletin 7 days before the bid submission. So take note, it's very important to mga timeline, very strict. Okay, next slide. So kung wala na mga tanong during pre-bid na i-release na ang bid bulletin, alam na ng bidders ang mga dapat gawin, the next step is magsasubmit na sila ng bids. Okay? Submission and receipt of bids. So, 2 envelope system tayo, di ba? So the first envelope, may dalawang laman pa sa loob. Merong eligibility, hihimayin natin ito mamaya. May eligibility document and the technical requirement. Ipapasok siya sa first envelope. And then, merong second envelope, yung financial proposal. Doon mo na ilalagay kung magkano ang bid mo. Okay? Sa financial proposal. Again, hihimayin natin siya kasi hindi lang siya basta ilalagay yung amount. Meron din siya mga requirements na mga dapat ilagay sa second envelope. Tapos yung first and second envelope, pag-iisahin siya sa isang bid envelope at yun ang isasabit natin sa BAC or sa procurement entity. So bid validity also, 120 calendar days from the date of the opening of bids. So kailangan yung bid mo, yung presyo and everything is valid for 120 days. So nagpo-commit si bidder na yun ang presyo, no? For 120 days from the opening of bids. Na valid yung bid niya for 120 days. Next slide. Electronic and online submission of bids. Ito yung 9-2020, yung sinasabi ko kanina. Ano yung mga requirements? Ano yung mga requirements ng online or electronic submission of bids? So kailangan yung infrastructure nyo, yung IT system nyo, yung online submission of bids nyo, merong ganitong capability. Number 1, meron siyang two-factor security procedure, archive and password protected. So may capability siya mag-ganon. Two-factor verification. Number 2, kailangan meron siyang allow access to password protected bidding document. And yung password shall be disclosed by the bidder only during the actual bid opening. Okay. And number 3, capable of generating an audit trail of transaction. Yung tipong pag nagsabit si bidder, meron biglang ma-generate na text o ma-generate na email, yung mga ganon. Yung dapat may ganon kayong capability. So meron kang two-password system, meron kang OTP, diba? Tapos meron kang password, tapos yung password ibibigay lang ni bidder pag mag-open na, tapos meron ka pang audit trail, may automatic email or text ka pa kunyari lang. So yun, kung ganun, then pwede ka mag-electronic submission of bids. Pero kung wala, then as I said, magmamanual tayo or gagamitin natin yung portal ng GPP. So yun ang ano. So magsa-certify si agency, no? As I said a while ago, magsa-certify si agency na meron siyang ganitong capability. At ino-notify niya si bidder na okay, tumatanggap kami ng electronic or online submission of bids. Next slide. So ito nga, kunwari electronic submission of bids, di ganun siya. Instead of the manual 2 envelopes, ito, two password protected files. Tapos may isang mas malaking ano pa, bid na may password protected din. And then the password submitted bids must be encrypted and password protected. GPP Resolution 9-2020. Next slide. Next slide. So sealing and marking, no? So ito, so envelope number 1, diba? Original technical documents, and then original financial documents, and then ilalagay mo siya sa, diba, envelope 1, and then envelope 2, and then ilalagay mo dun sa original bid. Each envelope shall contain the name of the contract to be bid, the name and address of the bidder, and then do not open before the date of opening of bid. So may label siya. Diba, naka-label na, okay, original to, and then ito, kalagay. Sino si bidder, ano yung name ng bidder, saka sino si back, anong name ng procuring entity. Next slide. And then, kunyari, nag-require ng photocopy or extra copy. So, ito rin yung itsura ng extra copy. So, meron kang copy 1, di ba? And then, copy 2, copy 1, and then, yeah, copy 1, tapos, yung first envelope, second envelope, photocopy lang, and then copy 1. Yung nakalagay doon sa bid envelope, copy 1 lang siya. Kasi yung kanina original. Ganun din. And then, next slide. Depende kung ilang copy yung kailangan. So, ayan, ang original, and then the copy, pag sasama-samahin mo pa siya doon sa mas malaking envelope. Kasi isa lang ang envelope na isasubmit mo. So, may original ka, tapos may copy, depende kung ilang copy ang required. And then each envelope shall contain the name of the contract to be bid, name and address of the bidder, recipient back, and do not open before. Okay. Next slide. So, ano yung rules natin sa unsealed at unmarked versus improperly sealed and improperly marked? Diba? Ang nakalagay sa rule, pag unsealed, nagsabihin siya ng bid na nakabukas, unsealed or unmarked, walang label, hindi natin alam kung kanino yun, or pag electronic naman, not compressed or not password protected, then it is disqualified. Pero pag improperly sealed, no, nakaseal naman pero medyo nabuksan or something, hindi na seal ng mabuti, or improperly marked, may kulang na label, or improperly compressed or improperly password protected, then it will be accepted. Pero may condition. Next slide.
So at this point po, we will be having our second knowledge check. May we ask our participants to type in their questions to the Zoom chat box. The GPPB TSO will give another special token to the first participant who will answer the question correctly. So our question is, improperly sealed and improperly marked bid envelopes shall be accepted provided that the bidder or its duly authorized representative shall acknowledge such decision of the bid as submitted. So is it true or false? Again, improperly sealed and improperly marked bid envelopes shall be accepted provided that the bidder or its duly authorized representative shall acknowledge such condition of the bid as submitted. Is it true or false? So our technical team po is checking who is the first to answer the question. Our Facebook Live viewers din po can participate by typing in your question in the comment section. Please be reminded po to register at the Google form attendance link sent by the Secretariat. Registration at the OTMS po and the Google form is a requirement for the issuance of the certificate, including po yung evaluation po natin ng speakers, ng training activity, and the presentation materials. So it's very important po na complete po yung requirements to issue the certificate, or else po hindi po tayo mabibigyan or may issuehan ng certificate for this training. So make sure lang po na you complete all the requirements, especially yung registration and evaluation. So meron na po ba tayong nanalo? So the first to answer is LGU San Francisco, Felbet A. Palangan. Her answer is true. So may we request our resource speaker, Attorney Chan? If correct po ba yung answer niya?
Yes, the answer is true, di ba? Na-discuss natin sa kaninang slide. Ang may pagkakaiba ang unsealed and unmarked versus improperly sealed or improperly marked. No? So ang improperly sealed or improperly marked, tatanggapin pa rin, na I mentioned a while ago, may condition. Di ba? May condition. Ano yung condition? Provided may magsacertify. Di ba? Di ba? Na doon sa Q&A. Provided may magsacertify na unsealed, improperly sealed and improperly marked siya. Di ba? Yun ang condition. So let's continue.
And congratulations po, ma'am. Our event secretariat will contact you on how you may claim your special token. So thank you so much for participating. Let's continue po the lecture.
Submission and receipt of bids. So date of submission should not be later than the following periods. So very strict, no? For goods, 45 days from the last day of posting of invitation to bid. Remember, tinabi ko kanina, yung pag-advertise, no? Yung pag-post ng invitation to bid, dyan nag-uumpisa tumakbo yung metro. Diba? Dyan nag-uumpisa yung pagbibilang. So nakalagay dito, yung date of submission should not be later than 45 days for goods, then for infra, 50 days, for 50 million and below, for infra na 50 million and above, 65 days, and consulting 75 days. So ito yung number of days na maximum number of days na i-set mo. Kasi tayo yung magsiset kung kailan ang submission. Diba? From the time of the last day of the posting, meron kang 45 days. No? Diyan mo gagawin yung pre-bid, diyan mo gagawin yung bid, pag-prepare ng bid. Bidder ang prepare ng bid. GPPB Resolution number 9/2020 for bids submitted electronically, the PE shall generate a bid receipt page, diba I mentioned, for the official time of submission, which can be saved or printed by the bidder upon receipt of the first and second envelope. So may bid receipt page, kunyari, may text or may email na matatanggap si bidder na nakapasok yung bid mo, diba? May mga ganung facility yung ibang mga website pag nag-submit ka, let's say sa mga let's say SEC. Sa SEC, let's say, no, pag nag-submit ka ng GIS online, kasi sa SEC, pwede ka mag-submit ng audited financial statement sa GIS online, then mag-i-email sila sa'yo na natanggap nila yun. Or sa BIR, pag nag-submit ka ng something sa BIR, makakatanggap ka ng email galing sa BIR na So yung may ganun kayo dapat, may ganun infrastructure. Next slide. So, anong pinakaiba ng modification and withdrawal? Pag nag-submit ka ng bid, dalawa ang pwede mong gawin. Pwede mong i-modify. So, let's say, meron ka nakalimutan na i-submit na papel, may nakalimutan na GIS, for instance, ilagay, pwede mo pang palitan. Pwede mo siyang palitan, mag-submit ka ng panibagong bid na nandun na sa loob, or gusto mong palitan yung price, no, or what, pwede mo siyang i-modify. Okay? Or pwede ka rin mag-withdraw. Kung ayaw mo nang sumali, then you can withdraw. So if it's modification, pwede mo lang siya magawa before the deadline. Diba? If you submit the bid before the deadline, pwede mo siyang palitan. But if you submit the bid during the deadline, hindi mo na siya mapapalitan. Pwede mo na lang i-withdraw. Diba? Atras ka na lang. So before the deadline of submission of bids, the bidder shall not be allowed to retrieve its original bid. Ang gagawin mo, magsasabit ka ng bagong bid. Diba? Nakalagay doon, modification. Para alam natin na modified siya. So yun ang titingnan natin, yung modified. Yung revised version. Tapos pag withdrawal, kung saan natin mag-withdraw, then letter of withdrawal must be submitted prior to the deadline for submission and receipt of bids. So if the bidder withdraws the bid within the interval between the deadline and expiration of the bid validity, diba? Tapos na yung deadline, saka ka nag-withdraw, then the bid security will be forfeited. Ganon din sa electronic. For electronic bid submission, the bidder shall send another bid equally secured, properly identified, and labeled as modification of the one previously submitted. The time indicated in the latest bid receipt page generated shall be the official time of submission. So ganun din sa electronic submission, pwede ka mag-modify. Next slide. Opening. So nag-submit na sila, ang next step is bubuksan na natin yung envelope. So the bank shall open the bid in public immediately after the deadline for the submission and receipt of bids. Diba? So usually pag yung deadline ng submission, let's say September 15, yung opening nakaschedule rin September 15. Diba? So yung mga bidders nandoon, hindi na sila uuwi. Titingnan na nila yung opening. Manonood na sila sa opening. So you open first the first envelope. Okay? And then, meron tayong checklist. Titingnan natin yung mga documents sa loob. Pag-usapan natin mga documents. So presence or absence. So may checklist nga tayo. And then, non-discretionary pass-fail criterion. Other presence or absence. So kung meron, okay, check. Pag wala, then disqualify. Okay? Kasi mo kami checklist. And then, later on, bubuksan natin yung second envelope. Yung second envelope ng mga bidders na pumasa sa first envelope, yun ang bubuksan natin yung second envelope. Then, only bidders who pass na pumasa sa first and second envelope, the only bidders whose first and second envelopes already passed will be ranked as red. Sila yung kasama sa ranking. Ila-rank natin yung lowest, and then next in line, next, number 2, number 3, number 4. Yung kasama sa ranking ay yung mga pumasa sa first and second envelope. Next slide. Password shall be disclosed by the bidders only during the actual bid opening. So pag electronic, diba, during the opening lang ibibigay ni to make sure na hindi siya mabubuksan. Hindi siya mabubuksan at masisilip. Next slide. Next slide. So opening. Okay, opening. In case the submitted bids cannot be opened as scheduled, kasi biglang bumagyo, or what, hindi tayo maka-open, then may notice of postponement tayo. The bank shall take custody of the said bids and reschedule the opening on the next working day or at the soonest possible time. And it shall post in the filter's website or in the website of the procurement entity concerned. Diba na ipopostpone. So of course, the bank shall keep the bid envelopes in the vault or in a secure place, diba, nakalock, and like that, kasi hindi mo siya mabubuksan. Kasi ideally, nabuksan na siya dapat kaagad. Next slide. Ano ang laman ng first envelope? First envelope, dalawang klaseng dokumento sa first envelope. Eligibility envelope, eligibility requirement, and the technical requirement. Dito sa eligibility requirement, may tatlong may tatlong klase pa. Meron kang legal, technical, and financial. Tapos yung class A documents in the eligibility. And then may class B ka if there's a joint venture. Yun. And sa technical component naman, meron kang bid security, project requirement, and the omnibus sworn statement. So lahat-lahat na ito ay nasa loob ng first envelope. So iisa-isahin natin ito. Next slide. So eligibility. So first envelope tayo. Next slide. Yeah. So may class A. Diba? Ano ang laman ng class A? So ang class A, meron pa siyang tatlong klase. May legal, technical, and financial. So hinihimay-himay natin siya. Okay, legal, technical, and financial. So under legal, andyan si Either meron kang PhilJet certification of registration, pa-back lang. So, meron kang PhilJet certificate of registration na platinum or isa-isahin mo siya. Meron kang SEC, DTI, mayor's permit, tax clearance, audited financial statement. Pag technical naman, statement of all ongoing projects, SLCC, pick-up license, statement of the consultant specifying its nationality. And then pag financial, NFCC or CLC. And then class B, yung joint venture agreement. So ito yung eligibility under, ito lahat ng ito ay nasa first envelope. Next slide. So i-imay natin siya. So class A, legal eligibility. So mayor's permit. Ano yung rules of the mayor's permit? Ang expired mayor's permit shall be accepted together with the OR. OR na nag-renew ka na. Diba? Let's say, nagpa-renew ka ng mayor's permit pero wala pa yung lumalabas na mayor's permit. So, pwede na yung OR. Then, the renewed permit should be submitted as a post-qual requirement in accordance with Section 34.2. So, during post-qual, pag ikaw na yung naka-post-qual, then saka mo na ipapita yung actual mayor's permit. Next slide. Iba ang rule pag tax clearance. Diba? Pag ang tax clearance mo expired, hindi na pwede. Hindi tatanggapin ng receipt for renewal of tax clearance will not suffice in lieu of a valid tax clearance requirement. Hindi tinatanggap a provisional tax clearance issued by the BIR for bidding purposes. It's not acceptable under GPPP Resolution 1-2014. So, ibang rules tax clearance. Next slide. Then, technical eligibility. Diba? Under Class A. Statement of all ongoing government and private contracts. Statement lang. No, statement of the bidder of all ongoing government and private contracts, including contracts awarded but not yet started, if any, whether similar or not similar in nature and complexity to the contract to be bid. The statement shall include all information required in the bidding documents. So, statement of lahat-lahat ng mga ongoing projects ni bidder. Next slide. Right. And then later on, statement of iba si all ongoing, iba si single largest completed contract, SLCC. So single meaning isa lang. Single largest completed contract. So pag goods, ang requirement is either 25% or 50% of the ABC, depending if it is expandable or non-services and non-expandable supplies. So 50% of the ABC dapat ang iyong SLCC or 25%. Now, may exception. May exception. Kunyari, if at the onset and after market research, applying the general rule will likely result to failure of bidding or monopoly. Then, diba, kung feeling niya masyadong strict ang 25 or 50% ng SLCC, diba, then you require at least 2 similar contracts, the aggregate of at least equivalent to required percentage, and the largest of the similar contract at least equal to 50% of the required percentage. Yun yung ano. We will illustrate it in the next slide. Next slide. So ito yung illustration. Diba? So, alam natin, pag expendable goods, 25%, non-expendable goods, 50%. So kung ABC mo 1 million, dapat ang SLCC ni bidder, 25%, meaning 250,000 dapat ang kanyang SLCC. Or if it's non-expendable, dapat 500,000 kasi 50% of the ABC. Now, kunyari, hirap, no? Based on market research, medyo malabo na magkaroon ng mga bid na mag-present si bidder na 250,000 ang kanyang SLCC. So pwede natin i-require na dalawa na lang. Dalawa na lang, imbis na isang contract lang ang kanyang SLCC, dalawa na lang ang kanyang ipakita na contract. Okay, so, pero ang total aggregate amount, in our case, dapat equivalent to 250,000. Diba? So, total ng dalawang contract dapat 250,000. And the bigger one of the two should be at least 50%. So, 50% ng 250,000 to 125,000. So, tignan natin example. Let's say si bidder nagsabit ng dalawang contract instead of isa. No? Yung isang contract niya 100,000, isa 200,000. So, pag inad mo siya, 300,000, so pasok siya doon. Kasi 250 lang kailangan natin. And then yung bigger one, 200,000, is bigger, is at least 50%. So at least 225,000. So pasok siya kasi 200,000 yung binigay niya. So similar here, no? Pag inad mo yung dalawang contract, 300 and 400, 700. So pasok siya kasi 500 lang naman nire-require natin. And yung bigger contract niya 400,000, it is bigger than the, at least 50%. 50% ng 500,000 is 250,000. Okay, so pasok siya. Diba? Kasi kung hindi natin nirelax, then hindi siya papasok. Diba? Kasi yung contract niya is kailangan either 250,000 or 500,000, hindi siya papasa. Diba? Next slide. So pag SLCC ni infra, kailangan 50% of the ABC. The SLCC should be at least 50% of the ABC. It should be similar to the contract to be bid or has the same major categories of work. And the 50% of the ABC upon adjustment to current prices using the PSA, Consumer Price Index. So contractors under small a and small b categories without similar experience on the contract may participate if the cost of the contract to be bid is not more than the allowable range of contract cost, ARCC, of their registration. Pag small a and small b categories of bidders without similar experience. Okay. Next slide. Pickup license. This is a requirement under Class A, no? So, kailangan valid pickup license or special pickup license for JV. Registration for the type and cost of the contract to be bid should be valid at the time of the deadline for submission and opening of the bids. So, dapat valid yung pickup license mo at the time of the deadline for the submission and opening of the bids. Hindi pwedeng expire. Next slide. So, makikita natin dito sa next slide. Hindi acceptable ang temporary pickup license. So kailangan valid, no? License issued by the pickup allowing an entity to engage in business as a contractor. Turnaround time for the issuance is 20 calendar days. So a temporary pickup license is not allowed. refers to the document issued by the pickup to a contractor who has filed for renewal of the pickup license before the 30th day of June, but have not yet been processed due to high volume of applicants. So hindi pwede ang temporary pickup. Kailangan valid pickup. Next slide. So nasa Class A pa rin tayo, financial documents. Financial documents include the audited financial statement showing the bidder's total and current asset and liability, staff received by the BAR or is duly authorized per annum. Audited financial statement for the preceding year which shall not be earlier than 2 years from the date of bid submission. Okay, so hindi pwede yung sobrang tagal na financial statement. Okay. Hello? Yeah. No-audit daw siya. So, it must be 2 years. Not earlier than 2 years from the date of the bid submission. Next slide. Nasa envelope 1 pa rin tayo. Net financial financial. Diba? Legal, technical, financial. Financial and FCC computation. Diba? For infra, goods, for goods and infra, the MFCC is computed this way. Diba? Current asset minus current liability multiplied by K, which is number 15, and then minus yung mga ongoing, all ongoing, outstanding or uncomputed portion of the project under ongoing contracts, including contracts awarded that yet to be started, coinciding with the contract to be bid. So, anong idea ng NFCC? Net financial contracting capacity. Diba? Kailangan, gusto natin yung bidder, but yung financial capacity niya aabot dito, at least equal to the ABC. Diba? Ayaw natin na yung bidder magbibid ng mababa, mananalo siya, tapos yung pala hindi niya kaya. Bila siya mababankrupt in the middle of the project kasi wala na siyang financial capacity. So gusto natin yung net financial capacity niya is equivalent to the ABC. At least alam natin kahit paano, no? Kaya niyang tapusin yung project. This is the idea of the NFCC computation. At the onset, alam natin kaya niya. Meron siyang money, meron siyang financial capacity. Okay? Now, that's for infra, kailangan ABC, equivalent to the ABC. Pag goods, may option ka. Pag goods, pwede ka mag-NFCC na pasok sa equivalent to the ABC or mag-submit ka ng credit line certificate from a bank. Okay? Tinatanggap ang credit line certificate in view of the NFCC. So, kukuha ka sa bank ng credit line certificate equivalent to the ABC. Next slide. Then we go to the Class B. Class B naman, for joint venture, kailangan mag-valid joint venture agreement, joint submission. So, kunyari may ka-joint venture ka, kailangan isubmit ng dalawang or ng lahat ng mga bidders ang legal eligibility documents. We talk about legal a while ago, di ba? Mayor's permit, tax clearance, di ba? By all, non-legal. Pero ang technical and financial, any of the partners. So, kailangan lahat ng partners mag-submit ng legal documents, pero technical and financial, any of the partners will submit. Next slide. Ito naman yung technical requirements. Diba? Sa loob ng first envelope, merong eligibility requirements, legal, technical, financial, and then the technical requirements. So technical requirements, nasa first envelope pa rin tayo, for goods and services, conformity with the schedule of requirements, conformity with the technical specifications. Ito yung nakalaman ng technical requirements. Next slide. And then for infra naman, ito yung nalagay mo sa technical requirements, technical eligibility requirements. Organizational chart, where the contract to be bid, list of contractors, key personnel, list of contractors, major equipment units. Yun. Next slide. For consulting naman, medyo mas marami. No? So technical proposal form, bid security, consultant's references, comments and suggestions of the consultant on the TOR, methodology and work plan, team composition and task, CV for proposed professional staff, time schedule for professional personnel, activity work schedule, omnibus sworn statement. Okay? So ito yung technical requirements doon sa first envelope ng consulting services. Next slide. Kasama rin sa first envelope ang bid security. Anong purpose ng bid security? To guarantee na hindi siya magbaback out. Diba? To guarantee that the successful winning bidder within 10 days from receipt of the notice of award enter into the contract with the broker entity and furnish a performance security. Hindi siya magbaback out kasi pag nag-back out siya, ma-forfeit yung kanyang bid security. So ano yung iba't ibang ways ng pagsabit ng bid security? Pwede ka mag-cash, which is 2% of the ABC or bank guarantee. O pwede kang surety bond, which is 5% of the ABC. Or pwede kang mag-bid security declaration. Merong template for that. Magsasign ka lang ng bid security declaration. May mga undertakings siya sa bid security declaration. So may option ka, either cash, surety bond, bank guarantee, or yung bid security declaration. Next slide. Ito, meron template ang bid security declaration. You have to follow kung ano yung template na nakalagay sa bid security declaration, yung mga laman. So, there's a new revision on the template of the bid security declarations after Resolution 16-2020. So, revised provision, a document undertaken signed by the bidder committing to pay the corresponding fine and be automatically disqualified from bidding of any procurement contract of a procuring entity for a period of time upon receipt of the blacklisting order in the event it violates any of the conditions stated in it. So may additional provision. As I said, you consult the template para to be sure na tama lahat ng laman sa bid security declaration. At meron din tayong revised penalties. Ito yung penalty na ipirmahan ng bidder na kung meron siyang violation upon receipt of the blacklisting order, meron siyang ito yung penalty niya, 2 years to be disqualified from bidding. And payment of the fine. Next slide. Omnibus sworn statement, again, meron din template. At saka may revision din. 16-2020, may revision doon sa template ng omnibus sworn statement. So you will have to swear under oath that you are not included in the blacklist. Everything is authentic, verified, the signatory is authorized, wala kang relation doon sa top, or the head of the entity, responsibilities, labor laws, etc. And in case of advance payment, failure to perform or deliver any of the obligations and the undertakings in the contract shall be sufficient ground to constitute a criminal liability. Ito yung mga bagong provisions. As I said, you consult the template for the omnibus sworn statement to be sure na tama yung mailalagay natin doon sa omnibus sworn statement. Next slide. Pag electronic naman, ang submission na receipt of bids, scan copies of the first envelope with the required form shall be considered as compliant with the requirement of the bid submission. Subject to submission of the original copies during post-qual. Ano yung original isa-submit? Bid security or bid security declaration and the omnibus sworn statement. During post-qual. So if you don't submit these original documents, then it will be ground for post-disqualification. Next slide.
For our next knowledge check, may we ask the participants to select their answer via the Zoom polling feature. The question is, procuring entities cannot add another requirement to nor delete any requirement from the identified list of eligibility requirements. Is it true or false? Procuring entities cannot add another requirement to nor delete any requirement from the identified list of eligibility requirements. Is it true or false? Please select your answer po in our Zoom polling feature. Most of our participants po answered true. So may we ask Attorney Chan?
Yes, it is true. There's the whole idea of having it standardized. Diba? One of the principles of 9184 is to standardize everything. We even have the standard bidding documents. Diba? So we have to standardize everything. So we do not add to the list of eligibility requirements. Kung gusto natin mag-add, pwede natin siya i-add doon as a post-qual requirement. Diba? Pero wag natin siyang i-add sa eligibility requirements. Kasi standard siya across all government agencies.
So thank you po for participating and we will continue the lecture po.
Okay. Let's continue. Meron tayong GPP Resolution number 9-2020, alternative document requirements during a state of calamity. The PE shall accept, so special special good, alternate documentary requirements during a state of calamity or implementation of community quarantine or similar restriction, which existence shall be determined and validated by the bank. So ano yung mga new na pwede natin tanggapin during a state of calamity? So hindi lang basta COVID, no? During state of calamity or may community quarantine, let's say ECQ, like that. Ito yung tatlo. Unauthorized bid security declaration. No? This was issued during the height of the lockdown, 9-2020. Diba? During that time, talagang strict lockdown, walang labasan. So walang notary. Diba? So mahirap makahanap ng notary. So unauthorized bid security declaration, allowed. Number 2, expired mayor's permit. Diba kanina we mentioned, ang expired mayor's permit is allowed, no? Pero isasubmit mo siya during post-qual. Diba? Now, with 9-2020, pwede mo na isasubmit after the award, but before the payment. So hinabaan pa. Hindi na siya post-qual. Ngayon, after the award, but before the payment, muna isasubmit ang mayor's permit. Tapos ito, omnibus sworn statement, unauthorized. No, unauthorized omnibus sworn statement is also allowed. No, subject to the compliance with after the contract of award, but before the payment. So ito yung mga bagong innovations. Next slide. So now, dito tayo sa second envelope. Tapusan tayo sa first envelope. Second envelope naman tayo. Second envelope, basically, nandyan mo ilalagay kung magkano yung bid. Pero hindi lang siya basta magkano yung bid. Meron pa mga ibang mga kailangan ilagay ng forms. No? So let's say for goods. Iba-iba rin siya for goods, infra, and consulting. Okay? So for goods, meron kang bid form. the applicable price schedule, okay, and then certification from DTI if you're claiming domestic preference, bidder as a domestic preference. So yan ang laman ng second envelope from goods. Next slide. Pag infra, ito yung laman, financial bid form, and then meron kang bill of quantities, meron kang detailed estimates, and meron kang cash flow by quarter, the second envelope. Next slide. Pag consulting, marami siya, no? Financial proposal submission form, summary of cost, price breakdown per activity, breakdown of remuneration, and reimbursables. So ito ang laman ng second envelope. Next slide. Miscellaneous expenses. So na-open na natin ang first and second envelope. And then we will now have the detailed evaluation of bids. Anong purpose ng detailed evaluation of bids? To establish the correct calculated price of the bids, ranking calculated total bid price from lowest to the highest. We want to recompute kasi baka nagkaroon ng error in computation, no? Si bidder, we want to verify na yung bid na amount doon is talagang totoo. Kaya nga we need the breakdown. So, i-recompute natin. And afterwards, i-rank natin kung sino si lowest bidder. Kasi siya yung isasabak natin sa post-qual. So, during detailed evaluation of bid, a non-discretionary criteria shall be used, which could include the consideration of completeness of bids, minor arithmetical errors. So, titignan natin ulit kung kompleto siya or hindi, right? And then, a result shall be contained in the abstract of bids. Ito yung work output sa detailed evaluation of bids. 7 days to complete from deadline of receipt of bids. Next slide. So in case of discrepancy, so discrepancy in figures and words, we use the words. And in price per item versus quantity per item, we use the unit price for the item times quantity. State the total price versus the actual sum of the price, then dito tayo sa actual sum of the price and component items. Unit cost in the detailed estimate versus unit cost in the bill of quantities. Doon tayo sa bill of quantities. We have a no contact rule, prohibition on communication with bidders from bid evaluation until award of the contract. Next slide. So bid evaluation, dito lang, pag may domestic preference, there's foreign bidder. No? Domestic preference applies where the lowest bid has a foreign component. And the next, so ang lowest bidder is foreign, tapos ang next lowest is domestic. So the lowest bidder, foreign, is increased by 15%. Titingnan natin kung ano yung result. No? The lowest domestic bidder matches the lowest bid of the foreign bidder. Next slide. So example, example. So let's say si foreign bidder ang bid niya 2.6 million. Tapos si domestic bidder ang next in line is 3 million. So since meron siyang foreign component, ang lowest bidder, pwede natin siyang gamitin yung domestic preference. Increase mo siya by 15%, so yung bid niya magiging 3.05. So mas mataas na siya. Mas mababa na yung bid ni domestic bidder. So tatanungin natin si domestic bidder, kung willing siyang i-match yung bid ni foreign bidder at 2.6 million. So kung willing siya i-match yung bidder, yung foreign bidder at 2.6 million, so i-award mo siya at 2.6 million kay domestic bidder. Imbis na 3 million yung bid niya. Pero kung hindi siya pumayag, then you award. Kung hindi siya pumayag, then you award it to the foreign bidder if the domestic bidder refuses. Ganyan ang domestic preference. Next slide. Bid evaluation for consulting. Okay, so opening and evaluation of proposals. So, ibang style for consulting. Diba? The period to accept for receipt of bid should be 75 calendar days from the last day of posting of the request for expression of interest. So, a preliminary examination using a non-discretionary prosecutor should be conducted before the detailed evaluation of bids. Next slide. Next slide. So ito na, as I said, ibang style pag consulting. Diba? So two methods ng consulting, either quality-based or quality cost-based. The entire evaluation process from opening to the submission of results to the hope should not exceed 21 calendar days. Okay? So quality-based meaning, ang titingnan mo lang is yung quality ng kanyang bid, yung quality ng kanyang proposal. Kasi consulting, pagalingan sila ng proposal, pagalingan sila ng concept, diba? Pagalingan sila ng design. So i-rate mo siya, i-gradean mo siya based on yung quality lang. Wala kang pakialam kung magkano siya. Pwedeng sobrang mahal pero wala kang pakialam. Right? I-award mo sa kanya kahit sobrang mahal siya. Or quality cost base. So merong, i-consider mo yung quality at the same time kasama sa evaluation yung cost. So bababa yung points niya kung mahal siya. Kasi kasama yung cost eh. Whereas yung quality base, kahit sobrang mahal siya, wala tayong pakialam. Kasi quality base lang. Next slide. So quality base, kailan siya gagamitin at quality cost base? Quality base for complex or highly specialized assignment of which it is difficult to precisely define the TOR and the required inputs of the consultant, where the assignment can be carried out in substantially different ways, such that proposals are not comparable. Diba? Let's say, design, magde-design ka ng something, design ka ng airport, for instance. So, iba-iba yung design, di ba? Pwedeng yung design ito ganyan kasi kaya mas mahal siya. And then design ito mas mura siya. So, how do you compare? Di ba? So, wala, di ba? Mahirap siyang i-compare na based on cost. Diba? And then goods and infra, talagang cost yung labanan doon. Kasi standard naman yung itsura. Pero pag consulting, design, iba-ibang way, iba-ibang approach, iba-ibang concept. So, quality-based ka. Diba? Pero in other cases na pwede naman medyo standardized, quality cost-based. Diba? As I mentioned a while ago, pag quality-based, considers only the technical proposals in the ranking. Pero pag quality cost-based, considers both the technical and financial proposals in the ranking. Next slide. Ito yung flow chart, no? Pag consulting, as I said, iba siya. Submission of technical and financial proposal. Diba? Submission of technical and financial proposal, ito yung first and second, diba? Yung two envelopes niya sa two envelopes sa infra and goods. Ito yung two envelope niya, technical and financial proposal. Pero ang open mo yung kanyang first envelope lang. Technical proposal lang. Diba? And then, titingnan mo yung technical proposal, diba? And then, rank mo yung technical proposal kasi siya, QBE lang eh. Quality lang. So, di mo papansinin yung kanyang financial. I-rank mo siya. So, mamimili ka ng dyan kung sino yung winning bidder mo siya. We'll show you later on paano sila i-rank. And then, i-approve ni Hope. And then, ino-notify mo siya. And then, saka mo bubuksan yung financial. Diba? Saka mo malalaman kung magkano yung bid niya. Right? And then, open up the financial and then negotiation. As I said, pwedeng siya yung pinakamahal pero we don't really care kasi ang habol natin is a technical lang. Okay? So, ito yung two envelopes niya, technical and financial. Right? So yun, hindi mo siya sabay bubuksan. Next slide. Pag QCDE, so open mo ang kanyang first envelope, ang kanyang technical, and then, kung pumasa, di ba, parang goods and infra. Open mo na first envelope, kung pumasa sa first envelope, open mo yung second envelope. Right? So nakalagay dito, yung pumasa sa first envelope, meeting the minimum technical score, diba? You open the second envelope. And then, sabay mo siyang i-rank. Ipagsasama mo yung technical score and the financial score. And then, yung mananalo, you will negotiate. So, I said, sa consulting negotiation. So, ganun siya. So, iba siya sa infra and goods. Next slide. So, paano natin i-evaluate yung technical proposal? So, pwede ka mag-individual, para, as I said, parang beauty pageant, each of the back member meron siyang score. Bibigay siya ng score para yung beauty pageant, di ba? So, merong score from 1 to 100. And then i-average mo siya. I'll show you later paano. Pag collegial naman, mag-uusap sila at they will come up with a consensus rating. Hindi na siya isa-isa. The bidder should be furnished the results after the evaluation is approved by the hoop. And the results are also posted in the field jobs and the website of the procurement. Next slide. So, kunyari ganito, di ba? Para siyang beauty pageant, back member A, B, C, D, E. Mag-rate siya, ito yung magkakalaban, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So lalagay na ng grade. Bigyan na ng grade, tapos average natin, may rank. Okay? And then next slide, hindi siya natatapos sa ganyan. Next slide. To avoid or remove the bias, next slide. Next. So to remove the bias, ang gagawin natin is tatanggalin natin, i-cancel out natin yung lowest score at highest score ni leader. Okay? Hindi siya kasama sa pag-average. Tatanggalin natin yung lowest score at highest score. Tapos, i-average natin siya, tapos i-rank natin. So, ganyan ang pag-rank. That's it. You have to remove the lowest and the highest score to remove the bias. Next slide. So, paano ang criteria? Paano yung weights ng mga score? So, recommended weight for quality, experience and capability, plan, and approach of methodology. Plan of approach and methodology. So, ito yung mga weights na prescribed. No? Quality, of course. Number 1 talaga yung quality. Then, experience and capability, and then yung approach. Then, if it's a complex project, pwede natin tawagin yung mga bidders at ipapresent sila isa-isa para maintindihan nila kung ano ba talaga yung konsepto. Diba? Ano ba talaga yung design? How does it work? Paano gumagana? Let's say it's an IT project. So, paano gumagana? Ano yung mga features? Next slide. So, paano natin i-compute yung QCBE? Meaning may componency cost, may componency quality. Okay? So, yung cost, kunyari, yung lowest score, yung lowest price, perfect score siya kaagad. But the lowest financial proposal should be given high points. So, perfect score si lowest. So, pag ikaw yung lowest bidder, lowest amount, may ano ka na kaagad, may advantage ka na kasi perfect score ka. And then yung mga ibang mga kalaban mo will be given points based on yung derivation dun sa amount ng bid mo, amount ng bid ni lowest bidder. So, ganun. Next slide. Let's see. Next slide. So, kunyari, si firm 2, ang bid niya 1 million. So, perfect score si firm 2. Sa cost component, bibigyan na siya ng 100 points. Okay? And then, yung ibang mga bidders, yung amount nila, let's say, si firm 1. So, yung kanyang denominator, yung kanyang bid, 1.1 million. Tapos yung numerator, yung 1 million. Tapos times 100, yun yung score niya. Diba? And then si firm 3, 1.5 million ng bid niya, yung denominator. Tapos yung numerator, yung bid ni firm 2, the lowest bidder. Then, ganun. So you will see, si firm 3, since siya yung pinakamahal, 1.5 million, siya yung pinakamababang score. 66.7 lang yung score niya. Versus si firm 2, 100 points yung score niya. Ganun. Next slide. Tapos isasama natin siya later on sa technical, syempre. Diba? So you will see here, ang weights na 70-30. 70 points, 70% ang technical, and 30% points ang 30% ang financial. So let's say si firm 2, ang nakuha niyang points sa technical is 84.2 points. So times 70%, weighted average siya. Plus, 100 points siya dun sa 30%. So ang total score niya is 88.94. So kung quality cost based, makikita mo ang weight ni technical 70. Ang weight ni financial 30. Pero kung purely quality yan, then 100% is based on quality lang. I-disregard natin yung cost. Next slide. And then afterwards, mag-negotiate tayo. Diba? Negotiated with only one consultant should be completed in 10 days. So, ano pag-uusapan sa negotiation? Yung mga terms, yung price, baka pwede pa nagpabaan, o baka pwede pa magbigay pa siya ng additional services, additional features, ano ba pwede natin kunin o hingin yung consultant, etc. Next slide. So pagkatapos, assuming tapos na, may natapos na for goods, infra, and consulting, dito na tayo sa post-qual. Okay, anong purpose ng post-qual? Purpose is to determine whether the lowest calculated bid for goods and infra and highest rated bid for consulting complies with and is responsive to all requirements and conditions as specified in the bidding documents. So siya ay magiging lowest calculated responsive bid. Diba? And highest rated responsive bid. Responsive kasi responsive. Hindi lang siya basta mababa yung price niya. Responsive pa yung kanyang bid doon sa kailangan ng agency. So anong purpose ng post-qual? It is to validate, verify, validate, and ascertain. Diba? All documents and statements. We will validate. Kung sinabong meron kang 3 projects sa DPWH, na ongoing, we will go to DPWH and check kung ano yung ongoing projects mo doon. Kung may problema ba yun, kung okay ka ba. Diba? Kung sabi mo ito yung SLCC mo, we will check kung okay ba yung SLCC mo, we will check kung may problema ba, on time ba, etc. So verify, validate, and ascertain. Okay? Again, non-discretionary pa rin. Diba? So kung bagsak, post-disqualified siya because may problema yung mga documents. Let's say, falsified, no, hindi pala totoo. Falsified pala yung mayor's permit, fake pala yung mayor's permit, fake pala yung articles of incorporation, etc. O they fail, post-disqualified siya. Okay? So timeline should be completed within 12 days. For goods and infra, 45 days. It should be completed within 12 days. Pero for certain exceptional circumstances at pinayagan kayo, pwede kang umabot hanggang 45 days for goods and infra. And for consulting, pwede kang umabot hanggang 30 days with the approval of the whole. Pero by default, dapat 12 days tapos siya. Next slide. So yun na, completed in not more than 12 days or kung pinayagan ka ni Hope, 45 days. Pagbagsak yung lowest calculated bid or highest rated bid, then ipo-postpone mo yung next in line. Diba? Post-disqualified siya, ipo-postpone mo yung next in line. And pag pin-postpone mo yung next in line, you'll have the same 12 days. Okay? Or the same maximum 45 days. And then, pag may nanalo na, pag meron ng failure to submit the post-qual requirements should be, of course, will be a ground to post-disqualify. And the forfeiture of the bid security. So pag may nanalo na, then we will give them ano yung mga post-qual documents? I'm sorry. Post-qual documents. So ito yung mga documents na sinasabit during post-qual stage. Okay? Latest income and business tax returns. Other appropriate licenses and permits required by law and stated in the bidding documents. Diba? I mentioned a while ago, kung meron kayo mga additional documents na gusto ipasubmit, huwag mo siyang ilalagay doon sa eligibility. Ilalagay mo siya dito sa post-qual. Doon mo na sa post-qual ipasubmit sa kanya. Huwag mong gagalawin yung listahan ng mga eligibility requirements. Next slide. So let's say foreign bidders. So ano mangyari pag foreign bidders? Kailangan nila na within 10 days from receipt na nanalo sila. The following documents shall be submitted before the contract may be awarded. SEC registration of the foreign corporation. And or the authority or license from the appropriate government agency or professional regulatory body of the foreign professionals engaging in the practice of regulated professions and allied professions. So ito yung mga pahabol na documents. No, kung may foreign component o foreign bidder siya. Kailangan niya ng SEC registration. This is GPPP Resolution 25-2019. Next slide. Then award. Okay, award. Tapos na yung post-qual, then award na natin. The BAC shall recommend the award of the contract to the lowest calculated responsive bid or the highest rated responsive bid at the submitted price or calculated price. Remember, we will recalculate the detailed evaluation of bids, whichever is lower. And then the BAC shall notify all the other bidders na meron nang nanalo. Within 3 calendar days from the issuance of the resolution recommending the award. And then, within 15 calendar days to approve or disapprove by the HOOP. So, i-recommend lang, take note, si BAC, naalala niyo sa Procurement 101, si BAC magre-recommend lang. Okay, magre-recommend lang siya. Si HOOP yung mag-approve. Remember, a while ago we talk about approval, hindi siya kasama sa pagpipilang kasi may separate number of days mag-approve si HOOP. So, 15 days, mag-approve si HOOP. Pwede niyo i-disapprove. Diba? Pwede niya approve, pwede niyo disapprove. Next slide. The notice of award must be posted within 3 calendar days. Assuming i-award niya, assuming pumayag si HOOP na i-award, then you post the notice of award. No, within 3 calendar days. Saan ipo-post sa bulletin board, sa PhilJEBs at sa agency's website. Next slide. The award of the contract is subject to the following conditions. From the issuance of the NOA, submission of the joint venture agreement, in case of procurement by a Philippine Foreign Office or Post, PhilJEBs registration, foreign funded, and stated in the Treaty of International Agreement, the pickup license. Performance security. A while ago, we talk about bid security to ensure na hindi ka magbaback out. Now we talk about performance security to ensure na matatapos mo yung project. Signing of the contract upon compliance with all the documentary requirements. And, if required, approval by the higher authority. Next slide. Ito na yung sinasabi ko kanina. Hacomil versus Abaya. Sabi sa Hacomil versus Abaya, which is a TOTC case, TOTR case, 2015, procurement process from opening to the bids, the award of the contract shall not exceed 3 months. Shall not exceed 3 months. In case of Hacomil versus Abaya, nakalagay doon the 3-month period from the opening of the bid to the award is mandatory. Diba? The different periods, yung period na pinag-usapan natin kanina, within which certain stages of the procurement process must be completed is not merely directory but mandatory. It is concluded that such irregularity rendered the procurement process not void. Mandatory yung mga periods na pinag-uusapan natin kanina. And dapat matapos siya within 3 months. Within 3 months. Okay? Otherwise, the whole process would be null and void. Next slide. Paano pag re-enacted yung budget? Nakalagay dito to clarify that the agencies may award the contract during the enacted budget under certain instances. Hence, the procurement entity did not wait for the new GAA to be enacted. Next slide. This is for 2018, issued in response to anticipation for 2019. So, award of contract under the re-enacted budget. The 15-day period for the hope to approve and issue the notice of award shall be told. Period for award of the contract and approve and termination of the shall begin to run upon the effectivity of the new GAA. The validity of the bids and bid security shall be extended at the option of the bidder to adjust to the new procurement timeline in case the period is told, pending the enactment of the new GAA. Next slide. I mentioned a while ago performance security. Performance security is to guarantee na hindi ka to guarantee na matatapos mo yung project. Right? Iba siya sa bid security. So, ganun din siya. Parang bid security din, may iba-ibang way no, ng performance. Pwede ka mag-cash or manager's check. Not less than 5% of the contract price or 10% of the contract price for infra. Or pwede ka mag-surety. Not less than 10% of the contract price. If you do not submit the performance security, then you will be post-disqualified. Or you will be disqualified. Okay, you will be disqualified. And then the next round will be undertake the post-qualification. And then your bid security will be disqualified, will be forfeited. Next slide. Ito yung ano. So we talk about bid security. Now, during the time of state of calamity or restricted during the community quarantine, Resolution 16-2020, meron siyang performance security declaration. Performance security declaration. Parang bid security declaration now it's performance security declaration. Okay? So, ito nga, meron siyang template, no? Pwede na ang performance security declaration. And furthermore, during the time of lockdown na, an unnotarized performance security declaration may be accepted, subject to the submission of a notarized performance security declaration before payment. Nabanggit natin ito kanina. Diba? Yung mga requirements during the time of community quarantine. Okay. Na-discuss na rin to during the Procurement 101 and yung mga diba? Yung mga efficient procurement methods during the time of calamity and imposition of the community quarantine. Sa lecture na yun, nabanggit ito. Right? Next slide. Now, andito na tayo sa contract signing. May notice of award na, sign. Now, sign. A while ago we talk about the notice of award, diba? May, I don't know, how many, may 12 days para mag-award, mag-approve para mag-notice of award. Okay? Pag naman notice of award, iba pa yung pag-sign ng document, pag-sign ng contract. Diba? May mga instances, mga agencies na kailangan pa ng approval ng higher authority. So on top of that, na-approve na siya ng HOPE, i-approve pa siya ng higher authority. Let's say sa board, that's GOCC, yung governing board siya. So kailangan pa siyang i-approve kunyari ng board. Or let's say the higher authority for some cases, hindi naman lahat. So meron pa siyang additional 20 days para mag-approve yung contract. Or 30 days if it's a board na ma-approve yung contract. Okay? Approve the contract. So may second approval pa. Iba pa yung na-approve yung award, iba pa yung na-approve yung contract. Magkaiba pang number of days. And nabanggit ko nung umpisa, itong 20 days and 30 days, hindi to kasama dun sa pag-compute ng number of days to finish the whole procurement. Kasi nasa approval na ito. Nasa contract signing na ito. Next slide.
So our next knowledge check, may we request the participants again to please answer via the Zoom polling feature. The question is, where should procuring entities from the executive branch upload their advertisement and post-award information? A. PhilJeps, B. PhilJeps and social media platforms of the procuring entity, or C. PhilJeps official website and social media platforms of the procuring entity. Again, where should procuring entities from the executive branch upload their advertisement and post-award information? A. PhilJeps, B. PhilJeps and social media platforms of the PE, or C. PhilJeps official website and social media platforms of the PE. So most of our answers po is letter C, PhilJeps official website and social media platforms of the PE. Tama po ba yan, sir?
Yes, that is correct, no? That is correct. So yung advertisement natin ngayon, PhilJeps, nabanggit natin kanina, PhilJeps, di ba? Official website, and di ba, of course, kasama rin yung si bulletin board at conspicuous place sa agency, and ngayon, social media platform. Social media platform ng agency. Okay. Next slide. Okay. So pagkatapos na i-sign yung contract, andito tayo sa notice to proceed. Notice to proceed from 7 days from the approval of the contract. All notices called for by the terms of the contract should be effective only by the time of receipt thereof by the successful bidder. So posting, saan natin ipopost ang NTP at yung contract within 15 calendar days of the date of the issuance? Sa PhilJeps, sa agency's website at sa bulletin board. Bulletin board. Posting requirement. NOAA, NTP, NOAA and NTP along with the contract are required to be posted at the website of the PhilJeps and the agency in any conspicuous place within 3 calendar days and 15 days from the respective date of issuance. Next slide. So additional transparency requirement of post-award information of procurement projects, posting documents. So ito yung nabanggit natin kanina sa Q&A, no? PhilJeps, agency's website, and social media platform. GPBB Resolution 4-2021. This year lang. Great. Next slide. Ito pa. For EPC of the 50 million and above sa executive department, post-award information shall also be published once in the newspaper of general circulation. GPBB Resolution 4-2021. Okay, so may newspaper publication pa after the award. For projects with ABC of 50 million and above. Next slide. Ito nga, 50 million and above. Diba? So kailangan mo i-post sa newspaper. Once in a newspaper of general circulation. Executive Department, GOCCs, GFI, state universities, and colleges. Next slide. Kailan may failure of bidding? Failure of bidding The back shall declare a failure of bidding when wala nag-bid, lahat sila bumagsak, di ba? Lahat sila bumagsak sa post-qual or refusal of the post-qualified bidder to accept the award without justifiable cause. So ano mangyayari kung magkaroon ng ganitong scenario? Then nire-review ni back yung mga requirements. So, bakit walang sumali? Bakit bumagsak silang lahat? Or bakit ayaw din itong tanggapin yung kanyang award? Based on the findings, the back shall revise the terms and conditions, adjust the ABC subject to required approval, magkaroon ng rebidding at re-advertisement. Kailangan i-rebid ulit pag nagkaroon ng failure of bidding. Next slide. Cancellation and termination of the procurement activity. So, kailan natin pwedeng i-cancel yung procurement? Ito nandito na to, luma na yan. Itong number 4 yung bago. Number 1, kasama na to sa, nandiyan na to dati sa rules of 9184. Physical and economic conditions have changed so as to render the project no longer financially, technically feasible as determined by the end user unit. The project is no longer necessary. Ayaw na niya yung project, hindi na niya kailangan. So pwede i-terminate, cancel yung procurement. Source of funds, yung pondo na realign, na gamit sa ibang purpose. So wala nang pondo para doon sa project. So pwede i-cancel yung procurement activity. Okay. Ito yung bago, no? Number 4. Brought about by the declaration of state of calamity or implementation of community quarantine or specific or similar restriction. So nagkaroon ng state of calamity, pwede mo i-cancel or terminate ang kanyang procurement activities. Number 4. Next slide. Ito na yung nabanggit natin kanina, di ba? Si BAC, you remember this sa Procurement 101, si BAC, magre-recommend lang siya. Si Hope yung mag-approve or disapprove. Di ba? So hindi naman automatic na kung ano isabit ni BAC, Hope, kailangan niya tanggapin. So ano yung mga grounds ni Hope para hindi i-accept yung recommendation ni BAC? No? The Hope reserves the right to reject any or no bids, declare a failure of bidding, or not award the contract. No, kahit may nanalo na. On what grounds? Prima facie evidence of collusion. So may nag-report na may collusion. No? Collusion between the back and the bidders and members of whoever. So collusion. Nakalagay sa 9184 yung yan. The back is found to have failed in following the prescribed bidding procedures. Kasi nakalimutan ni back mag-publish, o nakalimutan ni back mag-hold ng pre-bid, for instance, or nakalimutan mag-invite ng observers, things like that. Pwede maging ground for cancellation. For justifiable reasons, the award of the contract will not redound to the benefit of the government. Example, yung kanina, yung ground for termination and cancellation of procurement are also same with the ground for the Hope himself to not award the contract. Physical and economic conditions have changed, project is no longer necessary, or the source of fund has been withdrawn or reduced. Pwede niya gamitin yung ground na huwag i-award yung contract. Tapos na yung procurement pero hindi lang niya award. Okay, next slide.
For our last knowledge check, we request the participants to select their answer via the Zoom polling feature. So the question is, which is a valid ground for the cancellation of procurement activity by the BAC under GPPB Resolution number 09-2020? A, change in management. B, unavailability of PE's website, social media, and PhilJEP's website. C, brought about by the declaration of a state of calamity or implementation of community quarantine or similar restriction, or D, none of the above. Again, which is a valid ground for the cancellation of procurement activity by the BAC under GPPB Resolution number 09-2020? A, change in management. B, unavailability of PE's website, social media, and PhilJEP's website. C, brought about by the declaration of state calamity or implementation of community quarantine or similar restriction, or D, none of the above. So please select your answer in our Zoom polling feature. So most of our answers po is letter C, brought about by the declaration of a state of calamity or implementation of community quarantine or similar restriction. Tama po ba yun, sir?
Yes, that is correct. No? Meron tayong slide kanina nakalagay doon yung 4 na grounds for cancellation of procurement activity. And yung number 4 nga doon is brought about by the declaration of state calamity or community quarantine. So tama siya.
Thank you so much to our participants for actively participating on our polling question. And again, thank you so much to Attorney Gerard Chan for facilitating a very informative and comprehensive discussion on standard bidding procedures for goods, infrastructure, and consulting services. At this point, we will take a 10-minute short break, and after the break, our resource speaker will join us again for the open forum. So if you still have questions on the topic presented by Attorney Chan, please do drop them at the Zoom chat box. And of course, our viewers in Facebook Live may also drop their questions using the comment section. With that, thank you and stay with us.
Minadali pa. Mabango. Masarap. Subo na. Simulan sa sarsa.
Malasa!
Pasok ang lasa. Pero may isang hindi pasok. Matigas ang manok. Bakit kaya? Dahil pangit ang quality ng manok. Minadali pa ang pagluluto. Ay, sayang ang pera. Dapat mitikuloso. Tama?
Tama!
Ganyan din sa gobyerno natin. Gusto natin ng masarap na adobo. Matinong proseso na mula sa maayos na pagpaplano. Ang pagbili ng gamit ng gobyerno ay dapat nakaayon sa proseso upang matiyak ang pagbili ay sulit. Huwag munang magkamot ng ulo. Madali lang ang procurement. Hindi ito komplikado. Kailangan lang ng masusing pagpaplano at pagsunod sa proseso na itinakda ng Republic Act 9184. Ang RA 9184, mas kilala bilang Government Procurement Reform Act o GPRA, ay ang batas na nagtakda ng tamang proseso sa pagbili ng mga pangangailangan ng gobyerno, kagaya ng supplies, mga equipment, at general support services. Bahagi ng proseso ng pagbili ay ang procurement planning. Dito, nagpa-prioritize ng projects ang mga ahensya para makamit ang kanilang goals sang-ayon sa long-term plan ng buong gobyerno. Kasama rito ang pagtukoy sa tamang specifications at budget para sa procurement project. Lahat ng napagdesisyonan procurement projects ng isang ahensya ay ililista sa kanilang Annual Procurement Plan o APP kada taon. Anumang hindi nakalista sa APP ay hindi maaaring bilhin ng ahensya.
Bakit?
Para masiguro ang matalino at wastong paggamit ng pondo.
Tapos?
Para makasiguro na kumpleto at wastong lahat ng dokumento, ang ahensya ay magkakandak ng pre-procurement conference bago simulan ang pagbili. Mahalaga na malinaw ang pagkakasaad ng specifications and requirements sa bidding documents. Sunod dito ang paglalathala ng invitation to bid para hikayatin ang mga potential bidders na sumali sa procurement. Bago ang takdang araw ng pagsumite ng bids, magkakaroon ng pre-bid conference kung saan pag-uusapan kasama ang mga interesadong bidders ang lahat ng detalye tungkol sa proyekto. Ang mga interesadong bidders ay dapat palalahanan sa deadline ng submission of bids. Hindi kasi pwedeng tumanggap ng bid lagpas sa itinaktang petsa at oras. Tandaan na ang bid ay dapat na selyado at naglalaman ng 2 hiwalay at selyadong envelopes kung saan nakapaloob ang mga required technical at financial documents. Ang technical envelope ay naglalaman ng mga dokumento na magpapatunay na eligible ang bidder na sumali sa procurement at ng kanyang technical na kakayanang i-deliver ang goods. Ang financial envelope naman ay naglalaman ng presyo na iniaalok ng bidder para sa proyekto. Isa-isang idadaan ng BAC sa simpleng pass or fail preliminary examination ang mga natanggap na bids para matukoy kung kumpleto ang mga dokumento at kung naaayon ito sa pamantayan. Unang bubuksan ang technical envelope ng lahat ng bidders. Kapag kulang o mali ang dokumentong nasa technical envelope ng bidder, hindi na bubuksan ang kanyang financial envelope. Ibig sabihin, tanggal na siya sa bidding. Kapag na-scrutinize na ang lahat ng technical envelopes, saka palang bubuksan ang financial envelopes ng mga nakapasang bidders. Laging tatandaan na hindi dapat mas mataas sa ABC ang presyo na iniaalok ng bidder. Anumang bid ang mas mataas sa ABC ay matatanggal rin.
Bakit?
Dahil ang ABC ang limitasyon ng presyo ng proyekto. Para masiguro ng gobyerno na hindi ito gagastos ng higit pa sa naibudget para sa taon. Sabi nga nila, spend within your means. Bubusisiin naman sa bid evaluation ang mga nakapasang bids upang, una, masigurong kumpleto at naaayon sa pamantayan ang mga impormasyon. At ikalawa, masigurong hindi labis sa ABC ang presyong ini-offer ng bidder. Pagkatapos nito, ay irarank ang mga nakapasang bids mula sa pinakamababang presyo. Ang pinakamababang bid ang tataguriang lowest calculated bid o LCB na isasalang sa post-qualification.
Post-qualification?
Ito ang proseso kung saan sinusuri ng BAC o ng Technical Working Group ang mga dokumento at impormasyong isinumite para matiyak na lahat ay tama at nasa ayos. Sinusuri rin ang mga nakaraang kontrata, pasilidad, produkto, at pati pinansyal na katayuan ng LCB para masigurong kaya nitong i-deliver ang goods.
Bakit?
Dahil sa ganitong paraan, masisiguro ng BAC na ang mananalong bidder ay hindi lamang basta mababa ang presyo, kundi ito ay technically qualified. Kapag napatunayan sa pagsusuri na ang LCB ay nakapasa sa legal, technical, at financial requirements, ito ay tatawaging bidder na may lowest calculated responsive bid o LCRB na irerekomenda na gawaran ng kontrata. Ayan, ang proseso ng procurement sa gobyerno ay kasing dali lang ng pagluluto ng adobo. Kapag naplano at nahanap ang tamang sangkap, malamang walang palpak. Sa ganyang paraan, walang nasasayang. Tiyak na best quality at the best price ay swak na swak. Approve?
Approve!
Surprise!
Wow! Bahay-bahayan!
Ganda, no? Ginawa namin yan, Nak, para sa'yo.
Pero teka, saan na napunta yung mga halaman ko? Tsaka, bakit tabingi yung bahay?
Ay! Nag-iba agad!
Sayang na ang pera, muntik pang masaktan ang bata. Dapat talaga inaaral ng maigi ang instructions at hindi minamadali ang paggawa. Sa gobyerno natin, gusto natin ng matibay at pulidong infrastruktura. para masigurong tatagal ito at ligtas ang mga gagamit. Dapat dumaan sa maayos na proseso ng pagpili ng contractor upang matiyak na sulit ang gastos. Oh, huwag muna magkamot ng ulo. Madali lang ang procurement. Hindi ito komplikado. Kailangan lang ng masusing pagpaplano at pagsunod sa proseso na itinakda ng Republic Act 9184. Ang RA 9184, mas kilala bilang Government Procurement Reform Act o GPRA, ay ang batas na nagtakda ng tamang proseso sa pag-procure ng pampublikong infrastruktura ng gobyerno. Kasama dito ang pagpapagawa, pagpapaganda, pag-aayos, pagkukumpuni o pagbabalik sa dati, pagpapanatili, at pag-iba ng mga kalsada, tulay, gusali at iba pang infrastruktura ng pamahalaan. Ang buong proseso ng pag-procure ng infrastructure project ay parehas lang ng sa goods. Ipagkakaiba lang sa ilang mga dokumento, sa pamantayan ng pag-evaluate at sa bilang ng araw ng pagitan sa bawat stage. Nagsisimula pa rin sa procurement planning ang proseso para matukoy ang prioridad ng gobyerno. Pero sa pag-procure ng infrastructure project, mas maraming pagsusuri, pag-aaral at paghahanda ng kinakailangan bago ito masimulan. Tulad ng feasibility study, right-of-way acquisition, pagbuo ng program of work, pag-compute ng budget, at detailed engineering design.
Detailed engineering design? No sleep!
Relax! Ito ay ang resulta ng maraming aktibidad para masigurong ang infrastruktura ay magiging matatag at ligtas para sa mga gagamit nito. Naaalala mo yung tabing ng bahay-bahayan kanina? Hindi kasi pinag-aralan ng maigi. Kaya dapat lang na detalyado ang engineering design.
Ano naman yung right-of-way acquisition? Big words, ha?
Simple lang yan. Bago simulan ang paggawa, kailangan tiyakin ng gobyerno na may sapat na daanan ang mga apektado ng infrastruktura. Parang sa pagtayo ng bahay-bahayan. Hindi dapat inalis ang mga halaman nang walang paalam. Nagre-resulta ang procurement planning sa APP ng ahensya. Dapat idiin na anumang hindi nakalista sa APP ay hindi maaaring ipagawa ng ahensya para masiguro ang matalinong paggamit ng pondo.
Tapos?
Sa pre-procurement conference naman, inaalam kung tapos na ang detailed engineering design at available na ang right-of-way site na madadaanan ng proyekto. Dito kasi, matitiyak na handa na ang ahensya na i-publish ang invitation to bid. Mahalaga na kumpleto at wasto ang lahat ng dokumento at malinaw ang pagkakasaad ng program of work and requirements sa bidding documents para walang aberya sa implementasyon. Sunod-sunod na ang proseso ng paglathala ng invitation to bid, pagkandak ng pre-bid conference at submission of bids. Tandaan na ang bid ay dapat na selyado at naglalaman ng dalawang hiwalay at selyadong envelopes kung saan nakapaloob ang mga required technical at financial documents. Ang technical envelope ay naglalaman ng mga dokumento na magpapatunay na eligible ang bidder at may technical na kakayanang gawin ang infrastructure project. Dapat kasama rito ang kopya ng lisensya ng bidder bilang contractor na galing sa Philippine Contractors Accreditation Board. Ang financial envelope naman ay naglalaman ng presyo na iniaalok ng bidder para sa proyekto. Gamit ang simpleng pass or fail preliminary examination, bubusisiin ang mga dokumentong nakapaloob sa technical at financial envelopes. Kapag kulang o mali ang dokumentong nasa technical envelope ng bidder, hindi na bubuksan ang kanyang financial envelope. Ibig sabihin, tanggal na siya sa bidding. Kapag na-scrutinize na ang lahat ng technical envelopes, saka palang bubuksan ang financial envelopes ng mga nakapasang bidders. Laging tatandaan na hindi dapat mas mataas sa ABC ang presyo na iniaalok ng bidder. Anumang bid ang mas mataas sa ABC ay matatanggal rin.
Bakit?
Ito ay para masiguro ng gobyerno na hindi ito gagastos ng higit pa sa naibudget para sa proyekto. Isa sa ilalim naman sa bid evaluation ang mga nakapasang bids upang una, masigurong kumpleto at naaayon sa pamantayan ang mga impormasyon. At ikalawa, masigurong hindi labis sa ABC ang presyong iniaalok ng bidder. Pagkatapos nito, ay irarank ang mga nakapasang bids mula sa pinakamababang presyo. Ang pinakamababang bid ang tataguri ang lowest calculated bid o LCB na isasalang sa post-qualification.
Post-qualification?
Ito ang proseso kung saan sinusuri ng BAC o ng Technical Working Group ang mga dokumento at impormasyong isinumite para matiyak na lahat ay tama at nasa ayos. Sinusuri rin ang mga nakaraang kontrata, pati na ang experience ng mga taong i-assign sa proyekto. Dapat hindi makitaan ng pagkukulang gaya ng delays o mababang kalidad ng trabaho para makapasa. Pati ang pinansyal na katayuan ng LCB ay tinitignan din.
Kumbinsihin mo pa kami!
Sure! Sa ganitong paraan, masisiguro ng BAC na ang mananalong bidder ay hindi lamang basta mababa ang presyo, kundi ito ay technically qualified. Kapag napatunayan sa pagsusuri na ang LCB ay nakapasa sa legal, technical, at financial requirements, ito ay tatawaging bidder na may lowest calculated responsive bid o LCRB na irerekomenda na gawaran ng kontrata. Ayan, madali lang at walang hassle ang proseso ng procurement sa gobyerno. Kapag naplano, malamang walang palpak. Sa ganyang paraan, walang nasasayang. Tiyak na best quality at the best price ay swak na swak. Approve?
Approve!
Pare, dumating na yung playhouse ng mga bata. I-assemble na namin.
Ayos! Kailangan mo ba ng tulong? Mabusisi yan. Nagtanong pa ako sa engineer para mabuo lang ng maayos.
Di na pare, common sense lang to.
Kaya pala!
Kapag kulang ang kapasidad, magpatulong. Kapag kulang ang kakayanan, kumonsulta sa eksperto. Sa gobyerno natin, maaari tayong kumuha ng mga consultants na makapagbibigay ng gabay, payo o teknikal na suporta na tutugon sa pangangailangan ng ahensya. Ang pag-hire ng consultant ay dapat nakaayon sa proseso upang matiyak na ang procurement ay sulit. Hindi komplikado ang procurement, basta gawing masusi ang pagpaplano at sundin ang prosesong itinakda ng Republic Act 9184. Ang RA 9184, mas kilala bilang Government Procurement Reform Act o GPRA, ay ang batas na nagtakda ng tamang proseso sa pagpili ng mga consultants ng gobyerno. Consulting service ang tawag sa serbisyo na ginagampanan ng mga eksperto mula sa mga pribadong kumpanya o pribadong individual. Nagsisimula sa procurement planning ang proseso para matukoy ang prioridad ng gobyerno. Dito inaalam ang mga kakailanganing eksperto na tutulong sa ahensya. Dapat ding tandaan na binibigyang prioridad ang ekspertong Filipino at sinisigurong walang conflict of interest. Nagre-resulta ang procurement planning sa APP ng ahensya. Uulitin natin, anumang hindi nakalista sa APP ay hindi maaaring ipagawa ng ahensya.
Bakit?
Para masigurong wasto at matalino ang paggamit ng pondo. Bago simulan ng pagpili, dapat mag-conduct ng pre-procurement conference. Dito tutukuyin kung handa na ang lahat ng requirements at kung kumpleto na ang mga dokumento para sa procurement. Susunod na ang advertisement and posting. Ang ahensya ay magpo-post ng Request for Expression of Interest o REI para hikayatin ang mga eksperto na sumali sa eligibility and shortlisting process. Nasasaad dito ang mga detalye tungkol sa proyekto at ang criteria na gagamitin sa shortlisting.
Shortlisting?
Ito ang paraan ng pagsasala upang matiyak kung sino ang pinakamahusay at may pinaka-naaayong experience para sa proyekto. Aalamin ang mga eligible consultants base sa sinumiting eligibility documents gamit ang simpleng pass or fail preliminary examination. Sa shortlisting, binibigyan ng score o rating at nirarank ang eligible consultants base sa shortlisting criteria. 3 hanggang 7 sa mga na-shortlist ang iimbitahan na mag-submit ng kani-kanilang bid.
Score? Rating? Wala namang ganyan sa goods at infra.
Tama, sa procurement ng consulting services lang gumagamit ng numerical scoring o rating. Bago ang takdang araw ng pagsumite ng bids, magkakaroon ng pre-bid conference kung saan pag-uusapan kasama ang shortlisted bidders ang lahat ng detalye tungkol sa proyekto. Ang shortlisted bidders ay dapat paalalahanan sa deadline ng submission of bids dahil bawal tanggapin ang late bids. Ang bid o proposal ay maglalaman ng dalawang hiwalay at selyadong envelopes na may mga required technical at financial documents. Ang technical proposal ay naglalaman ng mga dokumentong teknikal patungkol sa proyekto. Ang financial proposal naman ay naglalaman ng presyo ng bid at mga impormasyong pinansyal. Ang layunin ng bid evaluation ay matukoy ang highest rated bid o HRB gamit ang napiling klase ng evaluation procedure. Quality-based o quality cost-based.
Teka. Ano yung quality-based at quality cost-based?
Relax! Tulad sa shortlisting, ang mga bids o proposals ay i-evaluate gamit ang numerical scores o rating. Sa quality-based evaluation, technical proposal lang ang binibigyan ng score na magiging basehan ng ranking ng bidders. Pero ang financial proposal ay di pa rin dapat mas mataas sa ABC o Approved Budget for Contract. Sa quality cost-based evaluation, ang kabuuan ng scores ng technical at financial proposals naman ang basihan sa pag-rank ng bidders. Alinman sa dalawang paraang nabanggit, ang bid na may pinakamataas na score ang tataguriang highest rated bid o HRB. Kapag natukoy na ang HRB, isasalang na ito sa negotiation at post-qualification.
Negotiation? Bago sa pandinig ko yan.
Sa negotiation, pinag-uusapan at nililinaw ang iba't ibang aspeto ng kontrata.
Tapos, post-qualification na.
Oo, sabay na isinasagawa ang post-qualification sa negotiation. Pero gaya sa goods at infra, sinusuri ng BAC o ng Technical Working Group kung tama na ang mga impormasyong nasa bid ng
Highest rated bid.
tumpak, HRB nga. Sinusuri rin ang mga nakaraang kontrata ng kumpanya, lalo na ang experience ng mga taong ia-assign sa proyekto. Pati ang pinansyal na katayuan ng HRB ay tinitingnan din.
Tapos, awarding of contract na.
Ayan, kuha niyo na agad. Madali lang sundan ang proseso ng procurement sa gobyerno. At kapag nagplano ng tama, tiyak na di palpak. Sa ganyang paraan, walang nasasayang. Tiyak na best quality at the best price ay swak na swak. Approve?
Approve.
The audiovisual presentations earlier shown are the procedures of goods and services, infrastructure projects, and consulting services earlier discussed by our resource speaker. You may download the AVPs for your reference at the GPPB website at www.gppb.gov.ph. At this point, we will now proceed to the open forum. Our technical team has gathered your questions in the Zoom chat box and Facebook comment section. And now let us call our resource speaker again, Attorney Gerard Chan. May we request our technical team to please flash the first question? The first question, how about po sa infrastructure projects? Pwede po ba ilagay brand ng paint na gagamitin?
Under the rules kasi, di ba, we mentioned a while ago, brand indication of brand is not allowed. Especially like ito, paints, di ba? So marami namang paints sa market. So hindi talaga tayo pwede lagay ng brand. No? So pwede natin ilagay yung color, yung type of the paint, di ba? Yung texture, whatever about the paint, except yung brand. So hindi tayo maglalagay, especially kung paint lang naman.
Next question po. Kung walang pre-bid conference, pwede na bang mag-opening sa 8th day?
kung walang pre-bid conference, pwede bang mag-assume o mag-open? Kasi nakalagay yung mga number of days, no, doon sa kanina na pag-uusapan natin para magkaroon rin ng time si bidder mag-prepare ng bid. So kailangan natin i-follow at least yung minimum number of days na nakalagay doon. So yun. So hindi yata pwede kaagad mag-opening on the day even if walang pre-bid conference. Diba? Kasi ang idea is we want to give the bidder ample time. Kasi nakalagay sa rules, diba, the earliest is on the 20th day from the posting of the bid. So bibilangin natin from the time na post natin yung invitation to bid hanggang sa opening, at least meron 20 days na pagitan. So we just have to maintain yung mga number of days.
Short list of consultants shall consist 3 to 7. Paano po kung 1 or 2 lang ang nag-submit at na-shortlist? Failure po ba yung bidding? Paano po kung dito sa bayan namin is limited lang yung consultant na mag-i-engage? Ayos lang po ba na 1 or 2 lang ang mag-engage malayo sa 3 or 7 or ideal na 5 consultants?
Nakalagay sa rules, no, basta i-shortlist mo siya. So kung 1 lang yung kung 1 or 2 lang yung nag-submit, hindi siya failure. Hindi siya failure. It should not be declared a failure. Kung 1 or 2 lang, di yung 1 or 2 lang yung ating 1 or 2 lang yung ating i-consider. Paano po kung dito sa bayan namin limited ang consultant mag-engage? Kaya lang sa 1 or 2 lang ang mag-engage. Yeah, 1 or 2 lang ang mag-engage. Okay lang yun.
Next question po. Pwede ba masuspend ang bid opening if in case meron mga issuances in relation to COVID-19? If masuspend, kailan ulit pwede ma-open?
Under the rules kasi, merong kailangan ilabas na notice of resumption ang ANBAC. So kailangan ino-notify ang bidder kung kailan siya na-suspend at kailan siyang magre-resume. Kaya nakalagay if ma-suspend, kailan ulit pwede ma-open. So si bidder, si BAC yung magsasabi kung kailan siya ma-open. At sasabihin kailangan si bidder, kailan yung ma-open. Kasi ang nangyari pag na-suspend, yung number of periods nag-stop eh. Diba? May tumatakbo na oras. And let's say during post-call tapos na-suspend. Diba? So yung number of days mag-stop yan. So kumbaga titigil yung metro. Tapos kailangan mo malaman kung kailan siya mag-reopen ulit. Then from there, itadagdag mo rin yung number of days. Magpapatuloy yung metro. Diba? So kailangan malinaw doon sa notice of postponement, kailan siya postpone, and notice for resumption, kailan siya magre-resume. Malinaw dapat nakalagay doon sa notice. Kailan pwede ma-reopen? Depende po kay kung kailan yung i-reopen. Kay procuring entity.
Good morning po. During the opening of bids, may dalawang bid opportunity pero iisa lang ang bidder. Sa first bid opportunity na na-open po, pass po lahat ng kanyang technical documents at doon po sa second bid opportunity, we found out na may isang document na na-attach na expired na pala. Ngayon, if i-fail po ba namin siya sa second bid opportunity, or pwedeng idaan namin siya sa post-qualification para ma-verify yung dalawang documents if ito ay expired ba or renewed?
Since expired, we found out na isang document na attached is expired na pala. So, ano yun, di ba? We talk about non-discretionary pass-fail criterion. So since nakita mo na siya na expired, i-fail mo siya, right? Failed siya kasi expired yung pinakita niya. Ngayon, i-fail po ba namin siya sa second bid opportunity na idaan namin or idadaan namin siya sa wala nang idadaan sa postcard kasi pag bukas failed na ano na siya kasi para ma-verify yung dalawang documents if ito ay expired ba or renewed siya. We found out isang document na expired na pala eh. So pag nakita mo on this list, nakita mo expired na eh. So bakit mo pa siya kailangan i-verify? Nakalagay dun sa papel, expired na siya. So failed na siya dahil expired na siya. Kasi non-discretionary pass-fail tayo eh. Ba't siya nag-attach ng document na expired? Ba't pa natin kailangan i-verify? Diba? So failed siya on this case. Diba? Kasi it expired.
Ground for disqualification po ba pag may nakita na project ang TWG at back during post-qualification na hindi siya nailagay sa statement of all ongoing contract form?
Yes, no? Grounds for disqualification yun. Na hindi na ilagay sa, oh yes, kailangan mo ilagay all ongoing. Yeah, kailangan mo ilagay yung all ongoing. Kasi gusto natin malaman, di ba, kasama pa nga siya sa computation ng NFCC. So, kailangan mo siyang ilagay kasi kasama siya sa, lalo na sa computation ng NFCC. So, meron siyang tinago, meron siyang hindi na ilagay. Tapos during post-call mo siya nakita. So, yeah, ground for disqualification.
Next question po. Is submission of SLCC document alone can be considered compliant to the eligibility requirement using the pass-fail criteria without computing if it meets the required percent of amount of ABC?
Kailangan siyang i-compute. Hindi lang siya basta meron siyang SLCC computation. Kailangan natin makita para masabing pass ay kailangan ma-meet yung minimum requirement na percentage of amount of the ABC. So kailangan natin siyang i-compute para makita. Kasi ganun din, later on during post-call, pag tinumpik mo tapos hindi na siya nag-fail, pwede pa i-fail mo na siya umpisa pa lang. Kaysa yung pagdating sa post-call, saka mo siya i-fail kung kailan kinukompute mo na siya. Ganun din naman yung effect.
Last two questions po. With regards to statement of all ongoing contracts, kailangan po bang mayroon ng attachment as stated in the standard form such as notice of award and/or contract, notice to proceed, certificate of accomplishment issued by the owner or project engineer?
Ano po to? Depende po to doon sa back. Kung ni-require ni back na i-attach niya lahat ito, then kailangan kasama siya sa submission. Pero kung sinabi ni back statement lang, kasi statement of all ongoing, statement meaning enumerate mo lang, hindi na kailangan ng mga supporting document, then okay lang. So depende kung ano nilagay ni back doon sa kanyang requirement, doon sa kanyang bidding documents.
Last question po. Do we have distinct and different technical documents for the procurement of drugs and medicine? Is CPR and Cgmp part of technical requirement or post-qual requirement?
According to the LGU procurement manual, yung CPR or Certificate of Product Registration at yung Cgmp, Certificate of Good Manufacturing Practices, are among the additional technical documents required for the purchase of health-related goods and services. So these requirements should be included in the instruction to bidder to be issued to the bidder. So required siya.
Hello po.
For LGU, for LGU procurement.
Single opo.
And that concludes the open forum. If you have more questions, you may still ask them out even after this webinar by visiting slido.com. All you have to do is to just type in the event code #governmentprocurementph, to which the GPPB TSO will answer through an issuance or through FAQs. With that, we would like to thank our resource speaker, Attorney Chan, for graciously accepting our invitation to be a part of this online training. For our winners, our event secretariat will contact you on how you can claim your tokens. Before we end our program, allow me to give a quick recap on our session for today. We have an in-depth learning discussions about the key concepts of the bidding procedures for the procurement of goods and services, infrastructure projects, and consulting services in compliance with RA 9184 and its 2016 revised IRR. Again, today's session is led by Attorney Chan. Thank you so much, sir, for accommodating us. Before we end today's session, allow us to make a few final reminders. We would like to remind again our Zoom participants to please register to the online training management system of the GPPB TSO by visiting the link flashed in your screens and using the control number emailed to you by our event secretariat. We would also like to remind the participants to please accomplish the participants' daily attendance sheet through Google Forms by visiting the link shared to you by our event secretariat in our Zoom chat box. Rest assured that all information gathered for this online training shall be treated with utmost confidentiality consistent with the provisions of the Data Privacy Act. Finally, for tomorrow's session, please be reminded that the program shall start at 8 a.m. and we would like to request everyone to log in at the Zoom platform at least 10 minutes before the program. The Zoom credentials are likewise emailed to you by our event secretariat. Before saying our goodbyes, may I request everyone to please open their cameras for a group photo opportunity. Our technical team will screenshot our picture. So, in my count po, 1, 2, 3. Next slide po. In my count, 1, 2, 3. And that concludes the third day of the online training for the municipal local government units on Republic Act number 9184 and its 2016 revised implementing rules and regulations for batch 2. This has been your facilitator, Janelle de la Cruz. Mabuhay and stay safe. See you all tomorrow.
Thank you po.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Keep safe po.
Thank you, Attorney Chan.
See you later, Ate Janelle.